Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Welcome to this episode of the murder part.
Wait, hold on a second. I thought this was alien lizard humanoids.
No. It's the murder part.
No, it's alien lizard humanoids.
Well,
it's got conspiracy theories.
But it's got murder.
But
part.
It's got alien lizard humanoids.
Murder.
Alien lizard humanoids.
Murder.
We'll just call it the alien lizard humanoid murder part.
Right.
Get them both in there.
Anyway,
You know, we're probably going to talk about movies. Maybe we make it the movie part.
Just throw it all in.
just throw it all together.
It's not a part, it's the whole. It's everything. So on this episode, whatever we're going to call it, we're looking at the case of Mathew Taylor Coleman. So before we get started, I want to introduce my co-host for a moment. Start with Jeff. How you doing, Jeff?
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a licensed clinical mental health counselor in the state of Delaware and in Pennsylvania, and I specialize in the treatment of OCD and other obsessive-compulsive disorders. And I'm happy to be here talking about Mathew Taylor Coleman.
Very good. What career choice would you have made if counselor didn't work out?
Well, I think what everybody really wanted to do early on was study ophiology, right? The study of of snakes specifically, and particularly how it deals with serpent DNA. I think that's probably a given for most people in the world. Turns out, I didn't know how to spell ophiology, and poof, that was it. The dream was dead.
But you could spell counselor, so it...
Yeah.
And that
it's
worked.
easier to spell.
Yep.
More letters, but easier to spell.
I got therapist, I got counselor, ophiology, I just never really got it. So we moved on.
It's a tough break.
Yeah.
Thanks. No, it's really, still my dream.
hear that.
But
It's really rough.
Serpent DNA, that's what I was hoping for.
Well, certainly, in a niche market, right? Not a lot of competition, I imagine, in serpent DNA.
But, probably huge demand. Probably, right?
The serpents are out there doing stuff, right? All the time.
Somebody's got
on
to.
DNA.
There
Somebody's
are a
gotta
lot of
learn.
serpents.
It's true. Yeah.
Somebody's got to learn about them. There's got to be something in the DNA. And if I had had that chance, the world might have been a better place.
Mm-hmm.
At least you can spell DNA. So
Wait, is it the D first?
yes, the D is first.
Got it.
And then the N, then the A.
Is it D and A? Or
See, that's the confusion. That's why no one goes into it.
it's funny because DNA is also a drug and alcohol, right? So people say DNA group and all this.
Capital D, lowercase n, capital A.
What does it stand for
drugs
in
and alcohol.
drug and alcohol? Like just drugs
and alcohol. Yeah.
Okay. I thought there was some deeper meaning to it, but that's pretty basic.
No. The N just is the abbreviation for the three-letter word and.
They couldn't go with A. They had to go with the N.
Yeah.
All right.
DAA just didn't make sense.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
So we'll move to Mike Smith. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing pretty well.
Tell us about yourself.
I also am a licensed professional mental health counselor in the state of Delaware, a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. My specialty is in narrative therapy and geek therapy, and I'm a self-styled master of all things geek.
Very good. Very good. So you also obviously chose the profession of counseling.
I did.
What other ideas did you have in terms of career?
Well, long ago I watched a Keanu Reeves, Kurt Russell movie, Point Break.
Mm-hmm. Point Break.
Yeah, it's a great movie. It's an iconic action flick, and but I got obsessed with surfing for a while. And I was like, you know what? I wish I could teach people how to do that. Problem is I can't stand up on a surfboard, and I don't really like the beach. So
Is that required for surfing?
yeah, kind of. It is kind of required. It fell apart right there.
That's a tough break.
Yeah, it was my dream for a while.
What did I did there? Tough break.
Yeah, it's a point break.
Oh, good one. I'm sorry to hear that, Mike. Really, it's
Yeah, that's a
It's
tough
rough.
break.
Yeah, the dreams die. They die. It's rough.
Just a huge wave crashing down.
just got tumbled over.
Yeah,
Wiped out. Yeah.
turf and surf.
Turf and surf. That's pretty good. So this case is...
Sorry to interrupt. How about you, Dr. Grande?
I think a Mercedes salesperson.
Oh, yeah.
Mercedes and nice cars.
You're pretty big on the Sprinters, though, aren't you?
The Sprinter vans are, the ultimate Mercedes.
Yeah.
When you think Mercedes quality and performance, you immediately think Sprinter van.
Naturally.
Naturally. Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking 0 to 60 times, quarter mile times, track times, agility, all those things. That's embodied by the Mercedes Sprinter van.
Yeah, it does everything.
Yeah.
And you can haul plenty of people or cargo in it. So I remember years ago, I was actually looking at a Mercedes. This was many years ago when they were still decent. Although I think the newer ones are actually decent, but they had a period of time where they were awful, really bad. But it was an older Mercedes at a dealer, and the sales guy, he's a nice guy, he was making a living, whatever. But there was he came up with this price, like, I don't ever pay what they're asking. Although it gets harder now with the internet, but back then you used to go in person. And you couldn't compare like a million dealerships. You just go in and he came back with some price that was lower than what they were asking. And he immediately like stuck his hand out. The dealer like put his hand out like, I don't know what the price was. Say it was like $4,000, right? $4,000,
Let's shake on it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So I shook his hand. I'm like, this doesn't mean I'm buying the car. I'll just shake your hand because I'm friendly. And I just stood there. We're just
we're just going to shake this hand here. This is not a legally binding contract.
That must have been awkward for him. He thought he made the sale, and then you dropped the bomb on him.
Yeah. I didn't want to interrupt his flow there, but that's, they use a lot of tricks, and I imagine they learned that in Mercedes sales school. So I'm thinking, Mercedes salesman. Yeah.
And yet you ended up as a counselor.
Yeah. It was a tough break. No Mercedes for me.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. And I've never owned a Mercedes, as it turns out.
Wow.
Of all the different cars I've had, and there have been many, no Mercedes.
I've never had a Mercedes myself.
Me neither. It's unlikely, probably, that, kids don't do real well in luxury cars, or rather the car doesn't do too well with the kids.
Right. That is very true.
Yeah. So maybe not for me. I don't know. Maybe when the kids are older. Who knows?
You never know. Can always dream.
Yeah. I'll come to you when it's time, though. And maybe you'll have something available.
I can tell you about all the sales techniques they'll try to use. Watch out for the handshake move.
Watch out for the handshake.
So yeah, this case, Mathew Taylor Coleman, at the time we're making this video, this is a recent case.
Yeah. It's only, a couple weeks?
Yeah, it just happened. And I'm pretty confident that there's going to be a lot more digging into this guy's background. We don't really have anything. Now, when the story first broke, I was able to get on to the Instagram for Mathew Taylor Coleman, which I understand now.
It's been taken down, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. And so I read through every post that was on there going back a long way, just about all of them. Some of them were pretty mundane. But what really struck me about Mathew from reading all those is it was actually, it was a normal story, right? It was a guy who seemed to have a lot of friends. He liked beaches. There was some in there, him traveling to maybe Europe or somewhere, like different places. He had Abby, his love interest, when she was his girlfriend. And then they're like, complimenting her and they're taking pictures together. It looked very normal. Then they get married. I think there might have been a picture of that in there. Then he has first child and the second child. His posts were pretty normal. But there were a few things we'll talk about that I saw in there. That
I think it was in the last year or so, things started to really change for him.
Yeah, it's one of those cases I was thinking about, like if somebody knew everything, right? They had all knowledge. And they came to me and they said, look, if you can guess from these Instagram posts, like this guy's going to commit 2 murders. Spoiler alert. You had to predict when he's going to do it, like based on the progression you see in the post. I would have guessed 10, 20 years in the future. Like it was not progressing fast. It wasn't like the wheels are just flying off and you're like, oh yeah, this guy's going to commit murder soon.
Yeah.
I never would have guessed that the homicides would have occurred just, I don't know what it was, but right after his last post. It wasn't long. Certainly wasn't years. I think it was maybe...
No, I think it was like days.
But yeah, it was.
It wasn't very long at all.
He didn't have large gaps between posts, but he didn't post frequently either compared to, younger people. They post like every day. It wasn't like that. But every few weeks or months or whatever, you'd see a post on there. And
well, that's an interesting concept because obviously before social media, there wasn't a whole lot of that to look to. Other if somebody had like a diary or a journal or something, but this stuff's publicly available. We were, you were able to see it. I wasn't able to see it by the time I got on there. They'd already taken it down. But it's interesting to try to that thought process of we're not necessarily analyzing him, but just considering the impact of what he wrote publicly on social media and how it might contribute to his thought process. And obviously we know that he allegedly murdered his 2 kids. Although he confessed to it, but allegedly.
Yeah, he still hasn't gone through trial yet.
Right.
So, I mean, if he pleads guilty at trial and goes to, and is sentenced, then we can say it's not allegedly anymore.
Right.
But we've all seen too many cases like this where somebody, confesses and then recants their confession and goes to trial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you find out that it was really psychosis or something, they weren't guilty, you never know.
Right.
He looks guilty based on what the police are reporting, but they don't have the best track record. So, I think he probably did it, but yeah, we don't know for sure.
Well, yeah, and so the social media posts, that was Instagram, right? That was kind of the big one that people were looking
That's
at.
the one I saw, yeah.
And so I remember you talking about posts dating back to I think 2017, 2018. They're kind of religious. It had a religious connotation to them anyway. And things about how, they're a little bit odd, I guess, but nothing, you might see that on somebody else's Instagram or social media that didn't commit a murder and think, okay, well, it's a little bit strange, but you wouldn't jump to that conclusion of murder. And much to your point, you probably wouldn't do the same for him. He had some odd posts, but you might see those very similar posts for somebody else that didn't commit any crime, certainly not a major crime. And so it's an interesting spin on things. That's kind of a new, a new thing. Of course, it's come about in, let's say, the last 10 or plus, maybe 10 or 15 years, looking at what they've posted publicly. Does that contribute to what we might have, red flags we might have seen for this person? Of course, in this case, it doesn't necessarily, but it's an interesting take on things.
Yeah, no matter what you post, I'm convinced no matter what you post, if you commit murder, like if you murder your children, people are going to see evil and distortion in those posts. You could have something like a pumpkin pie was that Halloween? People make pumpkin pies. It's a pumpkin pie of Satan.
Satan's pumpkin pie. It's Satan's pumpkin pie.
He used the wrong kind of pie or the wrong kind of pumpkin. He must be a killer.
How long did he cook that? That's ridiculous. He's a murderer.
Did you see how it's burned on the edges? It came from hell.
He didn't use spices. What's wrong with him?
I am convinced that we are going to see in the not too distant future someone testifying in court as a forensic social media specialist, something like that. And they're going to make their career about going in and doing deep dives on people's social media after they commit crimes or murders and being able to tie it back and be like, see, this right here is the first indication that this was going to happen. And it's all going to be BS, but...
Like the body language experts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, like the micro expressions. Oh, the micro expressions and how they can... be lie detectors.
You see that wrinkle in his forehead? That points to murder.
You see this? You see the subtle shaking of his head when he said yes? That means he was lying. No.
It probably, to your point, Mike, it probably won't be too long until there's a university that has some kind of course about a social media analyst or something. You get certified in it, and then maybe there's even a license at some point to be this analyst of posts and social media and publicly available stuff.
Unfortunately, it probably end up being in like the psychology department.
Yeah, probably going to end up in mental health, like everything that's experimental, right?
Put it in one of the soft sciences. Right.
Exactly.
Now, can we put it in sociology instead of psychology?
I think that's where it belongs.
I think it should be there, but it'll probably be in psychology because it'll be like, well, this is the study of an individual, not groups.
And then you'll see like life coaching certifications. They'll start offering the social media expert certifications. I think there are already experts out there to help you like manage your social media so you don't look...
Consultants, yeah. There are social media consultants who will help you, increase your presence.
How not to look like a killer.
Media. Yeah. Yeah. Let's cover up all of the murdery parts of your post. Let's get rid of those and make them a little bit more about, hey, let's look at the pie and make the pie a happy pie. Right? Put a happy smiley face on it.
Well, I'm convinced if those...
No devil horns.
If those consultants really got loose and became affordable, I think 90% of Instagram content would have to be not posted, right? Like some of the judgment, especially of these like these younger influencers, they'll just like it's impulsive. I don't know what they're thinking when they hit the whatever the button is, the publish or show the world, my foolishness, whatever that button is labeled.
Post. At least on Facebook, it's post.
End career. That's what it should say.
End career. I don't know whether it's going to end my career today or 20 years down the road when I decide to run for office, but this is my end career.
Well, also, I think that like recently there was something's been happening with Jeopardy, television show Jeopardy,
Yeah.
where at the time, again, we're making this video. It's not solidified, but it looks like maybe LeVar Burton has a chance of getting back in because
and I'm super excited about that. I love LeVar Burton.
well, he's definitely a good choice for that.
Yeah, he did a great job hosting. I think that he is the only other person I can think of that I could see doing that role, other than Alex Trebek. It just was iconic.
Yeah.
And,
Well, that's a tough act to follow.
It is.
No matter what your credentials
Really
are.
is.
Yeah. If just his experience, like he had just so much time on that show to become so refined, like you just can't act that way like automatically when you first walk in the door. Like that's years of polish.
That the internet and the social media went wild trying to get him on the show to host. And it took a while for it to happen. Finally did. And everybody's like, he did a great job. Make him the next host. And then the executive producer, Michael Richards, is like, nah, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, that's the part that I was referring to because he had some, I don't know what they were, podcasts that he did
A few years ago, I think 8 years ago or something like that.
And it was supposed to be, he said it was supposed to be an irreverent show. And he did say some things that were offensive. Like, I mean, I certainly wouldn't recommend saying those things or, they're not kind. But the idea that you can, he can do that one thing for one time in his life when he was acting a little irreverent, and that now followed him all the way. And I think he's in his mid-40s, like 46, something like that. Just
and he pulled back. Like, he's not going to be hosting the show. Like, yeah, that was announced this morning.
Yeah, and, I think people do offensive things through their whole lives, but with social media now, it's like a record that anybody can access. That seems like a very odd reason to not get that job. I don't know if he was really the best host. Anyway, that's a separate story. I like LeVar Burton better, but in terms of like a fair process, I don't know. Just something he said on a podcast. It was a few things, but it really wasn't like the end of the world. It was just insensitive, offensive stuff, like garden variety for the most part. I didn't see all of it, so maybe there's something else in there. But you see, like, he probably wasn't thinking anything about that at the time.
Right.
Of course, that wasn't social media. It was a podcast.
Right.
So in theory, it was trying to make money or something.
Still publicly available, though.
Yeah. And with social media, like as I say, if it goes up on the internet, it's never going down. Like, it's always going to be there. Just like these podcasts.
That's right.
Always be here.
They're eternal.
They're going to be eternal. But things they come back. People can look for stuff, and they do look for things, and will find them and bring them up. And like we see it especially in Hollywood and politics, happens all the time. Like I sincerely doubt that if you're trying to get a job at a bank as a bank teller, they're going to do a deep dive into your social media. I could be wrong, depends on the bank. But I kind of doubt they're going to do a deep dive in your social media and find out that, oh, you made a racist joke 12 years ago. We can't hire you to be our teller. Like, that's just not going to be a thing. But if it's like, I'm going to be a public face of Jeopardy, like there's a high standard here. And
yeah, it's impossible.
Alex set that bar really high for scandal, and that means like anything below that bar is just not acceptable.
Yeah, I think it's unrealistically high standard. I think that's the concern. The only good news for people in that situation is everyone else is posting foolish stuff too. It's like, you could say, oh yeah, you got me. I did these things, but look at everyone else. Right? It's got to be a rank order system.
It happens, and we see this happen in political discussions all the time, where it's like we deflect by pointing at everybody else, right? And go like, oh yeah, and it happens all the time. Like both sides of left and right will point at candidate A did this. Oh yeah, well candidate B did this, and it's kind of deflecting back and forth, and it's all a fallacy because it doesn't matter what candidate B did has no bearing on what candidate A did at all. But in social media, things like this, it doesn't matter. Like, this is where we actually want to be. It doesn't matter what somebody else did because you did this. And that's what we're focusing on.
Right. Yeah, the question, where it gets into the pseudoscience is the meaning.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so people look at that Jeopardy guy and say, well, the meaning behind his statements means he must be a terrible person and not good with facts. I don't know where they get that. I mean, it's a show about facts. Like, it doesn't make much sense.
He doesn't write the answers.
Yeah. Like, he's going to write offensive things into the...
It's like he doesn't do most of the writing. They have writers and researchers for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's kind of bizarre.
Well, hopefully... I don't know. Hopefully that's maybe a lesson to future generations that, like you said, Mike, that everything you put out there is going to potentially be there forever, and it could be looked at some years from now. And of course, it's going to ruin a lot of people, who started doing that stuff when they're young, and we all did stupid things when we were young. Everyone has. But then it's out there publicly, and maybe that'll be a lesson for some people to learn and realize, I have to show a side of myself that I want everyone to see, even if it's not their true self, I guess. Maybe that's the message that they're receiving. But hopefully the message is, I got to be fair, I got to be equal to people, and understand the experience of other people, and not make jokes about other people maybe that might be a minority culture or something like that, or just maybe just anybody for that matter. But that does kind of become a high standard, maybe impossibly high, to figure out who's going to be, taking that.
Because what is offensive, some things are always offensive. They've been offensive for 100 years. But other things, they're recent. Even see like old TV shows. Now they're banning some old TV shows because offensive things that weren't offensive then. Mm-hmm. But the people in the shows are still alive. Yeah. And they're like, oh, you must be a terrible person. There's no scientific reason to believe that. That's just fantasy. And I think it's just this nonsense, like this cancel culture nonsense that, I see, it's almost like the micro expression. I see this little offensive statement. It must mean, you're a serial killer. Well, how? How do we know that?
I mean, to be fair, there are certain things that in today's culture are just unacceptable. And if we see those things, even if they're from the past, we say that's not acceptable. Now, the appropriate response, I think, is things like something like Disney's done on some movies that include some of that content. They don't just get rid of it. They preface it with like, this was made in a different time.
Right.
This is the context in which you're hearing these things.
I have no problem with that. And my problem is to go back to the actor who's now like 80, who made that when he was 20, and saying, oh, you were a horrible person.
I didn't write it.
It's just...
I just acted it because it was money.
Yeah, there's no question that values change. And I think one of the concerns is they seem to be changing very quickly, and it's hard to keep up. And so you have, again, young people putting this stuff out there. In 10 years, it could be offensive. In 20 years, it could be offensive. They don't know. Mm-hmm. And there's no way to get rid of it. So, but again, it's, there's a lot of noise. So, their hope is they get lost in all the other foolish actions.
Yeah, that'll be, it's always a lot of information that's out there, right? There's tons and tons, hours and hours and pages worth of just stuff that we could look at all day long. And obviously that's every day. So 10 or 20 years from now, how are they going to sift through all this information? Millions and millions of YouTube videos and text and documents and news stories and stuff.
Supercomputers.
That kind of blows my mind about like all this information. How are you going to kind of, index this? Well, how are you going to look at this 10 or 20 years from now, if at all?
This is a future. Time. This is a future industry we could be pioneers in, designing algorithms to find offensive content on people.
The offense analysts.
You created thousands of hours of online content, but in 1 second we heard you say this word or whatever.
We could always use Watson the supercomputer, who was actually on Jeopardy. Mm-hmm. Which it brings me back to another point that just came up to me in my head. Like Jeopardy does have writers, and those writers love to slip little subtle jokes into things, and they'll do that with some of their category names. Mm-hmm. And one of the most subtle ones, Jeff won't really get this joke. It's not that I'm trying to exclude him. It's just the Jeopardy folks did. It's a Star Wars joke.
Oh yeah, I'm not going to get it. Go ahead.
It's a Star Wars joke. So. And it infuriated me because there was the last two categories, and as Alex was introducing them, the one category was greed. Oh. And then the very next category was shot first. And I was like, those are fighting words, Jeopardy writers. They're fighting words.
Right, should be Han.
Han shot first.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff.
You're right. I don't get it.
Yeah, I know.
I recognize
Yeah,
there are characters in these movies, and I don't know anything about them.
It was this effort to clean up the Han Solo character because in the original movie, he killed this, I think it was a bounty hunter named Greedo when he was in like a bar somewhere in a desert planet. And
in the original theatrical version, he's the only person who shot. Like he under the table pulls his gun out, shoots him under the table. But then in '99, when they brought in the remakes, the remastered theatrical releases, they went in and moved Han's head at a moment. They had Greedo shooting first, like they had a blaster shot come out, and they had Han's head just whoop, over to the side, in the worst CGI ever, because they just whoop, and back like it was supposed to be like, oh, he knew it was coming, so he just kind of tilted his head to the side,
right.
But they didn't do a tilt; they just whoop.
Kind of removed his head from his neck for a second,
and then just moved it off to the side and then back, and people went insane about it. It was terrible because it just destroyed. But yeah, Han shot first.
That's really good.
Yeah, it's interesting why they tried to clean it up because, we don't know Greedo's history. Like when we're watching episode 4, we don't know. He could have been a stone cold killer that was wanted by the inner.
And that's what it was supposed to be. Like he is a bounty hunter kind of trying to collect.
Maybe the rebellion wanted him. Maybe he killed rebel soldiers or something, and had it coming.
But what's really funny is I actually managed to pause the TV on that shot of those two categories next to each other. I got a picture of it. I posted it on Facebook, so it's a social media thing now. Writers of Jeopardy, I'm on to you.
10 or 20 years from now, Mike.
Somebody's going to find that on my social media.
You might
and
get
be
in
like,
trouble for that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how, but
And you said they were fighting words now.
they are fighting words.
Oh, you're sticking to it. Okay.
That's what I said on my social media post too. Like, those are fighting words. I didn't call any specific person out. Just the writers of Jeopardy. Those are fighting words. Again, I'll say it again. I will. I'll stick to that.
I told you this was going to be the movie part. It's all of it together.
All right, so let's look at the limited history we have on Mathew Taylor Coleman from his social media and other sources. So in 2021, in the year we're making this, Mathew was 40 years old. He worked as a surf instructor. Apparently, he and his wife started this school in 2011 in Santa Barbara, California.
Surf instructor. He stole my dream job.
He was living the dream.
Started a company with it too, Mike.
Making money, doing what I always wanted to. I'm going to try and put that aside for now.
Set aside the emotions for now, but we'll get to them.
That's right.
Yeah, we'll have a session after this is over.
So Mathew lived in Santa Barbara with his wife Abby, a two-year-old son, Khaleo is how they say it's pronounced. Who knows? And 10-year-old daughter Roxy. That one's easier to pronounce. So Khaleo and Roxy. Now, on August 7, 2021, it appears as though Mathew and Abby were planning on going on a camping trip with the kids, but he jumped in the van with the kids, no car seats. And of course, at this age, they would need them. Both of them would need them.
2 years old and 10 months.
Yeah, they would both need car seats. And he took off. This was a Mercedes Sprinter van.
Sprinter van.
Quality machine.
Now, I had read somewhere that he put one of them, since he didn't have a car seat, put one of them in a box.
Right.
Now, I saw in a video from the hotel we'll talk about later, the 10-month-old Roxy was in a car seat in one of those videos. So I don't know if he put the 2-year-old in the box or what it was, but and I'm not sure how he got. Maybe he didn't have a car seat for Khaleo. But Roxy being a 10-month-old, not being able to walk, I assume, almost have to be in a car seat.
Well, it may have been one of those, like being 10 months old. She was in one of the carrier type that has a base that is in the car that locks in place.
That's what I mean. She just kind of
right. She's just in that, and he just puts that in the car without having the base because the base was in another vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so he's got that, and just puts the other kid in a box.
Yeah.
I don't know, like it's a cat.
Yeah. Well, obviously that's not the worst thing he did, but
No.
Yeah, but at this point,
from the worst.
that's, I guess his wife just thought this is what's happened. Like he took off. It's a little strange.
She actually was very upset, and she tried to call the police and find out what's going on. And they told her there was nothing they could do.
Yeah, they
He had
offered
to be
to
missing. He had to be missing for 24 hours before they could do anything.
They offered to, I guess, send an officer out, and she declined. Then the next day she called and said, "I'll take that officer now."
yeah.
And now she was concerned. So at
And
first it was...
she did fill out the missing person form online.
Oh, okay.
And she filled that out online and then called them and said, I just filled out the missing person. Can you send a person out to talk to me?
Yeah, so she was trying to get their attention, and they couldn't locate him. And as it turns out, he went to Rosarito, Baja California, Mexico. So Baja California is in Mexico. Mm-hmm. It's a state there, and it's right below California, the state in the United States. So
no confusion.
No confusion.
Yeah, I believe
Rosarito, I believe, is south of Tijuana.
Right, Tijuana would be the one that everybody knows because you can travel there very quickly from San Diego. But yeah, Rosarito's down a little farther. So interestingly, his wife said that they weren't in an argument or anything. Like, she didn't seem to have an apparent reason why he did this. She didn't know.
She had no idea
what was going on.
I haven't heard any interviews with her, or I didn't see in any other than that, like that she said there was no arguments or anything, which I think she had told the police. I haven't heard anything else from her. Were you guys able to see anything else from his wife?
No.
Yeah, okay, so that's an unknown at this point.
I think she's playing it pretty close to the vest right now.
Yeah. Yeah, what are we on, August 20th today?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so as of August 20th, we haven't heard much from his wife, Abby, which makes sense. I can only imagine what she's going through.
No, and they're probably asking her a lot of questions now. So they were unable to locate him, so they asked her if she would access I guess this is the Find My iPhone app. This is
Find My Phone.
Yeah. Find My Phone, yeah. So you can, I guess, get the geographic coordinates of the phone, and she logged in. And again, that's where they figured out that we were dealing with Mexico here.
So this was on August 8th, right? That she got the police involved.
Yes.
And they asked to do the Find My iPhone thing. Yeah.
Yeah. August 7th is when he took off.
Yeah.
Right.
August 7th he took off. August 8th is when they're using the Find My Phone. They find him in Rosarito. Mm-hmm. But it would be 2 days later before they actually got a hold of him. On August 10th.
Yeah, but before that, on 8 a.m. on August 9th, we see that in Rosarito, a farm worker finds the bodies of two children that match the descriptions of the missing children. And they were obviously deceased and in a barn, I guess on his property or wherever he was working. The same day at 1 p.m., United States federal agents caught Coleman coming back into the United States in the Mercedes Sprinter van.
By himself. Nobody in there, obviously.
No other occupants in the vehicle. They noticed blood was on the registration. I imagine they caught that because they were asking for that. Mm-hmm. And he handed it to him. So they took him into custody. And he waived his Miranda rights. So the right not to self-incriminate, he talked to him.
Mexican authorities investigating the bodies discovered that they had been stabbed multiple times. Mm-hmm. They believed at that time that it was with a wooden stake that was found nearby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it had blood on it.
Yeah.
So we see that, Coleman's in there with the investigators in the U.S. He said that he killed both his children with a spear fishing gun, which is something he was known to use. Like in his occupation, surf instructor, he would also go fishing. So he was familiar with that.
He would teach people how to correctly fire a spear fishing gun.
Now, he would say in the police report, I'm pretty sure it was in the police report, that he killed Roxy, 10-month-old Roxy, first with the spearfishing gun, and that she didn't die at first. And
I thought that was his son.
Okay, I might have read it wrong.
I think it was that he tried to kill his son first, and he didn't die right away, but he made sure that the shot at his daughter was like dead on, and she died immediately.
Okay. Either way, it was painful to read stuff like that for anybody, but you're thinking about children here, defenseless, pretty much. It's horrifying to read and to consider what his mindset was. And you're intentionally killing your kids, allegedly, but you're intentionally killing your kids. And it's horrible. It's really tough for me to conceptualize that. I'm sure it is for anybody. Yeah.
It's hard to imagine, how he got to this point. We'll talk more about some of the things he said, but again, kind of looking at social media, he seemed to really have an affection for the kids, like a lot.
Yeah.
There was really nothing in there that indicated he would be violent to them.
Right.
He had some grandiose fantasies about what happened to his daughter, but nothing where she would be harmed. So he said that, he did kill them. He injured his hand while he did it, and I guess he had a bandage or something. It was a noticeable injury. He placed their bodies in some brush, and of course they were found in the barn. So I don't know if the brush was in the barn or how that works. He drove a couple of mile ways to a creek. He hid the spear gun. This is interesting. Based on what we hear later, it kind of points to psychosis. He's saying he hid it, which seems intentional to not have consequences. Yeah. And later he would throw bloody clothes in a blue trash bin on the side of the road in Tijuana. Yeah. So, horrible.
And it doesn't, like, those statements don't actually jive with some of the evidence that we already know. Like the Mexican authorities said that the children were both stabbed multiple times. There were multiple wounds on them, and yet he says that there was only multiple wounds on one because the other one he was very careful with. Which is really weird, being careful with murdering someone.
It's a weird combination of words.
It was a weird combination, but that was his statement. That was part of his statement. So,
yeah. Well, he would go on. I guess they said, "Hey, why would you do that?" Right?
And that's a question that many people would ask.
Mm-hmm. And he answered. Right? He said that he thought his children were going to grow into monsters. He had no choice but to kill them in order to save the world.
He's trying to save the world.
He said that he was...
Which is noble, I would say. It's noble to try and save the world, not by killing infants.
Yeah. But again, two phrases that don't go together. Right?
I killed the infants to save the world.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. He would further claim that we'll talk about these groups, the Illuminati and QAnon. These are two pretty well-known conspiracy theories, one old and one new. They enlightened him.
They sent him visions, apparently.
Yeah, visions that made him realize that his wife, this whole time along, was possessed. It's an interesting way to put it. Possessed with serpent DNA.
Jeff.
This could have been me. I could have been the expert here.
Yeah.
If you could have been called in to actually help figure that out, but...
If only I could spell ophiology.
If only, but...
Yeah, so there, it is something you hear about, right? The serpent DNA.
There you go.
Apparently, Jeff would have known all about serpent DNA, but unfortunately, we can't turn to him for that knowledge right now.
I'm just a counselor.
He's a mental health counselor.
It's just a mental health counselor, so we'll just have to work on speculating about what could have been happening in a situation like this.
I don't know much about serpent DNA, so we'll see what happens.
Neither do I.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So Mathew said that this serpent DNA was passed on to the children. Now, this is interesting too. I talked about this before we were recording. If the wife had serpent DNA and it was passed on, wouldn't the children have less serpent DNA? Unless Mathew also had serpent DNA? I don't know. I need a serpent DNA expert for this.
Me too.
Yeah, we would need. But from what I understand from some of these conspiracy theories with the alien lizard humanoids, the alien serpent, the lizard serpent DNA actually kind of breeds true. It always stays half, even in the next generation. Like it's a very dominant strain that manages to go through. I don't know how they managed it that way, but the alien lizard humanoids have advanced technology far beyond the understanding of mortal men like us.
Well, it's powered by negative energy, negative thoughts and feelings. So, it's very, very powerful. They can make these really complex machines.
Yeah.
And now, how about batteries that hold negative feelings? Are they big?
Lithium ion.
This reminds me of like the movie Monsters, Inc. and just like putting on energy in canisters and powering a town and stuff. Maybe that's what they're going for with these conspiracy theories.
What they would have found if they just started making people laugh is that's more powerful than fear. So
imagine that conspiracy theory. I think that people are just laughing too much and it's powering the world or something like that. That'd be
people
quite
are laughing
twist.
too much.
Right. That'd be quite the twist on what we think of as conspiracy theories.
Then we would be in on the conspiracy, making people laugh. Just saying.
There you go.
Yeah, it's interesting. They always go with scary, negative things,
right?
And never there's too much happiness in the world. Mm-hmm. I think with David Icke, a well-known conspiracy theorist we've talked about on another show, I think one of his missions,
alien lizard humanoids.
Mm-hmm, I think one of his missions is to make people happy. Right? That's
what he claims.
Yeah,
and yet always talking about negative stuff. I don't know how you make people happy by trying to monger fear.
Yeah, he must have an idea in there somewhere.
But I think there are some people who just are only happy when they're exposed to fear stuff. So he makes those people happy.
They're
and
only
afraid.
satisfied. Yeah.
But it's weird because when they're afraid, they're happy. But I don't understand it.
Yeah, that's not, some of it, I think, for some conspiracy theorists like this, maybe enters into the delusional realm. We'll talk about some delusion types.
Right.
But so we see that there was video surveillance footage retrieved from a Mexican hotel in Rosarito on August 7th. So he arrived, same day he disappeared. His children were there with him.
Yeah.
And then they're seen leaving early on August 9th. He comes back to check out. Again, would checking out be a priority? I mean, it seems like he's doing all the normal things.
Yeah.
He's hiding evidence. He's not incurring extra financial burdens by checking out. And the murder is like, he just commits it as if it was no big deal. Just kind of sneaks it in there like it's just a regular activity. But yet he confesses.
It does feel necessary for him, as he said about saving the world and all that. So I guess that does perhaps feel like just part of his day. If it was necessary, he didn't want to do it, but it felt it was necessary. I had to save the world. So maybe it was just part of a normal routine for him.
Yeah, we're gonna go camping, but the first night I think we'll stay in a hotel, and then we'll go out to the barn. I'll kill the kids, and then I'll go have something at McDonald's and Mexican McDonald's, and then go back to the hotel and maybe watch some pay-per-view a little bit, and then I'll check out and head home.
I wonder if he
Wait,
was.
hold on a second. What about the murder kids thing? Like, was
Go
that
back a little bit
on the checklist?
Yeah. I wonder if he was heading home. I'm curious about that. What he was planning to do next. Because he was going north, as far as I know, because they caught him at the border. So I wonder if he was just heading back home.
It would have been interesting to see if he made up a story and said, yeah, I went to Mexico and I don't know what happened, or I never took him in the first place. Like, what would he have said?
Yeah.
He was trying to save the world, too. You would think that if you're trying to save the world, like if you really believe that, again, like checking out of the hotel, would that be a huge priority? The world's going to blow up or...
Well, the world was already saved at that point.
So, might as well not,
It's like, hey, I saved the world. We're going to have tomorrow, so I'm going to check out of the hotel. Yeah.
Got to save some money, I guess.
Right?
For tomorrow.
Yeah. Because we're going to have it tomorrow, thanks to me.
Saved the world. Yeah.
The future's restored. Yeah, so that is the story with him. That's at this point, that's all we know about his timeline. Obviously, he's going to face some pretty serious charges.
Yeah.
I imagine he'll be convicted. We'll have to see what happens. Right now, these are just allegations, but it doesn't look good based on what we're being told by the government.
Right. And this will be really an interesting one to follow as we move forward, whether or not he decides to plead guilty. With the fact that he's confessed to it, probably, I would think that he would.
It looks bad.
It looks bad, but he might not. He might just say, he might listen to his lawyers and say, we can get you off with insanity.
Well, there's a really probably decent mental health defense, as far as they go. None of them are actually that good, but he's got a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's life in prison in a mental hospital instead of in a regular prison. That's no one gets out anymore.
I think though that in the mental health facilities are a better option than prison.
Some prisoners would say that the prisons are much better, especially now in his situation, he's got a problem. He actually committed the homicides in Mexico, and those prisons are decidedly worse than anything.
They absolutely are
in California.
So his best bet is to face the trial in the United States and try and go for that insanity and go to a mental health facility in the United States. It's not like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest anymore.
Right.
Like there are mandates and ethical things that have to be upheld in the treatment of people in facilities that, there's no Nurse Ratchets anymore.
Yeah, they're pretty brutal though. The criminally insane units, the locked units, they're hellholes too. Like choosing between prison and a mental hospital is, you lose either way. I would say that they're equally dangerous. It's just a question of I think there's some extra behaviors in the mental hospitals, like screaming and some erratic behavior. I'm sure you get that in prison too. I think the two are kind of blending together because a lot of mentally ill people are in prison.
Yeah.
I mean,
which is unfortunate.
you see authorities admitting that basically, they're almost flipping a coin to send them to a mental hospital or send them to prison or jail.
Yeah.
But we'll see if like our good friend Ronnie in Florida, whether or not he actually is evaluated as competent to stand trial first.
Right.
He might not be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something to consider too. He might be able to stall this forever, through, because I think when you're ruled incompetent to stand trial, it's every, I don't know about California, but different jurisdictions, it's every year or two you have to be reevaluated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it is per jurisdiction. Even within one state can have different jurisdictions. And some of them are every 6 months. Some of them are every year. Some of them are every 2 years. Mm. And so it could go on for a long time.
Yeah. So he's got a few cards he can play, but I think he's facing some crimes in California, and then the serious crimes in Mexico. So he's in trouble either way.
Makes me wonder why he went to Mexico. And maybe we'll never know. Maybe that'll be part of the trial, whenever the evidence and all that. But, maybe it just wasn't poor. Maybe it was just poor planning. Because I would assume anybody goes to Mexico to commit a crime in hopes that they get away with it. But he had to have known that there was going to be cameras in this hotel. He had to have known that his phone would be able to be tracked or whatever. Maybe he wasn't thinking about these things. Maybe his thought process really wasn't there. But it just seems odd that he would go to Mexico and then just start going right back. Again, like it was just part of his routine, just part of something he just had to do, like he said he believed. But it just doesn't make, none of it makes sense. I don't think any murder makes sense, but this in particular, nothing really adds up, to what you might consider for someone committing murder, especially of your own kids. It's really, really strange. It's particularly strange.
It's an incredibly weird mindset that he had to have had while perpetrating this, which does tend to speak towards psychosis, towards some mental health issues.
Yeah, let's touch on that here. So we mentioned that he had this Instagram that used to be up. Now it's down. I don't know why it was taken down. I can only guess it was because of what happened. But there was some interesting information. We can go through it here item by item. Going back, the first thing I saw that was notable was back in 2017. Right, and here we see, again, mostly normal posts. It's important to frame it this way. I kind of cherry-picked ones that had maybe a mental health symptom connection. I don't know. I mean, it could just be faking it or whatever, but ones that may be connected to what happened, which, is tunnel vision, right? It's missing all the relatively normal posts he made where you wouldn't have known anything no matter what he did or didn't do. But here's some that are a little bit troublesome. Let's take a look at these. Mathew wrote about how at some point in their lives, people will accumulate enough evidence to demonstrate why we should stop trusting government officials. But then he goes on to say, bosses, coworkers, church, family, and friends. Or everybody, right? Isn't that just about everybody? You've got a lot of people in there.
Yeah, sounds like just a lot of, like everybody.
Usually,
don't trust your friends or your family or strangers on the street or clergy or the government or doctors.
Did I miss anybody? No, I think we're good.
He didn't say alien lizards.
Oh, that's
I don't trust alien lizards. Or alien lizard humanoids.
That was probably pretty intentional.
Or lizard humanoids or alien humanoids. Or just don't trust anyone.
Because maybe if he talked about that, they might come after him, or they might, who knows?
Well, I understand the not trusting the government part if he is a conspiracy theorist. That's pretty
standard line.
Yeah, I think they're required to say that within the first few minutes of meeting you.
The Pledge of Allegiance, pledge of lack of allegiance to the government.
Yeah. But to go
Pledge
on...
of lack of allegiance.
Yeah. But to go on and talk about everybody is strange. And then he said that all people possess the DNA of God. So later he, of course, would say serpent for his wife and children. So in September 2019, so this is 2 years that went by, he wrote about how society will make a discovery which will open a door to a limitless flow of divine power and creativity. Now, this is one of those things that could seem pretty normal unless you put it in the context of the homicide. And he's creative.
Right.
A big flow of creativity, limitless flow of divine power.
Yeah. It is one of those things that I've heard similar things from people who are actively delusional and in active psychosis who, said, God speaks to me. And God speaks through the pigeons, and the pigeons told me that the world was going to be filled with light and things like it was. It's like, okay, that's wonderful to hear from God pigeons.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of ideas of reference that come up in with psychosis and delusions, where they see kind of ordinary things like a pigeon or like a politician on TV or really a tree blowing, anything, and they see something that specifically refers back to them, like it's a message, and they use that word, messages,
right? Or visions, and Mathew Coleman did mention specifically visions that he was given. But that's the big three, the trinity of delusional topics, right? Government, religion, sex.
And sex, absolutely. Put them all together, and
some people do. Some people do.
Yeah. So here we see now again. Almost a year goes by. We're now in June in 2020, and he wrote. This is a quote from a larger statement he made. One who awakens people to the fact they are eternally chosen. And why I picked that is the word awakens. This becomes important later on. And this is something I've heard many, many times from people with psychosis. I'm being enlightened. I'm seeing something you can't see. I have special vision. I'm waking up.
As opposed to being woke, which is a completely different thing. But woke is more just like about social awareness. But yeah, there's an overlap there. We've talked in previous things about conspiracy theories where the conspiracy theory mindset includes that aspect of I know something you don't know, or I know something, I'm special because I know things that other people don't know. And we have a little overlap with that delusional state, the psychosis state, where it's I'm being given this special knowledge that nobody else knows.
Yeah, and I don't like you because you don't have the knowledge, but at the same time, I want to save you from your lack of knowledge. Right? That's the relationship they have with other people. They don't like them, but they're like, oh, I'm the one who saves you. They want to be glorified someday for that. So they don't want to push people too far away, unless you're an alien lizard, which in case they really don't like you permanently.
Now, are we talking about people with psychosis or conspiracy theories?
Well, that was
That's kind of it's a gray area. It's kind of an overlap for both of them.
Yeah, I was looking at the middle of the Venn diagram there, where they intersect. It's
just kind of like almost just a regular circle.
it's sometimes I wonder, but there certainly are many conspiracy theorists that aren't psychotic, but some are, and those are the ones that we tend to hear about in the news, the ones that are psychotic.
And they really, the people who have some kind of delusional beliefs, when there are conspiracy theories that are really in the public view, and it's like a great time for conspiracy theories, kind of like right now, they feel more justified, right, and more compelled to. Now there's people who are on my side. There's people who understand me and understand what I'm seeing, what I'm thinking about, what I'm experiencing, whatever, and they probably feel more safe or more able to kind of come out of the woodwork and express their views and potentially even do things like this, where they feel like they have more support and therefore I can go and save people, kill people,
or riot.
Or riot, sure. Yeah.
So a few months later, after that last one, where he uses the word awakens, we see that this is October 2020. He said that he had a sense. His daughter was born at a very pivotal time in history. She would represent a dawn, or even an awakening, to years of great blessing for our family and nation. Now, right there, you're like, all right, you get the word awakening, but it's not too weird,
right?
It's not too bizarre. But then he writes, his daughter had been handpicked by God to slay the giants in the land. So he was close to finishing that post without seeming bizarre, but didn't quite make it.
Right. Of course, the giants. This is a big conspiracy theory thing. They're tied in. The giants in the Bible are also referred to as the Nephilim. And the Nephilim, by many conspiracy theories, especially ancient alien theorists, are the Anunnaki or the alien lizard humanoids from ancient times. So, right there, like if he has any of that knowledge at all, he's making a reference.
Yeah. So she was going to be the one to kill the alien lizards, or their whatever, their descendants, which are also giant lizards to some extent.
Because the DNA travels.
Yeah,
Right.
It's magic.
it is. Well,
Magic DNA.
as everyone would point out, any technology sufficiently advanced to a less advanced culture appears to be magic, which is always misquoted. Always. I think it was Arthur C. Clarke wrote that. But he wrote it in an article he wrote about not pushing our technological limits, about the dangers of not pushing our technological limits. And he referenced things like at the dawn of cars, right? Dawn of automobiles. They said, you can't travel faster than 45 miles an hour because the human body can't handle the air pressure against their chest. You wouldn't be able to breathe and you would die if you go faster than 45 miles an hour. And
I stick to that. I never go above 45.
right, yeah, I followed you home sometimes. I know that's not true.
Mike goes right and I go left, and Mike's got a much faster car than I do, so see how that goes.
But of course, people proved that wrong. And then Arthur C. Clarke talked about the speed of the sound, the speed of sound, and how that was broken. And like every technological limit that we put on things, we say, you can't do this. We then break that, and we do that thing. So the whole thing about it's magic. This thing is like, he's like, it's not magic. It's technology. And we use technology to break these limits. That's what it really means. But everybody talks about it as like, oh, well, magic is just technology that we don't know about yet.
Yeah, not what he intended.
Not what he intended.
Yeah.
It's not what he intended at all.
So here we see the last post that I saw that I think had maybe any potential connection was one he made in November 2020, which is actually quite some time away from August of 2021. Mm-hmm. So he went quite a distance there without problems. He talked about a great American renaissance that would follow years of COVID, censorship, and political divisiveness. It would empower each person's heart, and they would explode with innovative ideas, new business models, new sounds, and never-seen ways to build an amazing community. This one seems more grandiose, right? And I guess overly optimistic. He also talked about how this is, I'm paraphrasing, this is the Dark Ages. And later on, we will look back at this time and realize basically how we weren't enlightened, maybe.
I'm pretty sure we will. Like that's a thing that'll happen, but that's a thing that always happens. Mm. People in the 1800s are saying, would have been saying that, and here in the 21st century, it's like, yes, you were unenlightened. But then they would look back at the 1600s and be like, well, they were really unenlightened in the 1600s, so we're better off now. That's not an unusual thing to happen. Mm-hmm. Human history does, we do look back. As long as we're looking back. Mm-hmm. If we stop looking back, that's when we have problems.
Yeah, so he kind of mixed in some philosophy. And I think I touched on again the idea that maybe he knows something, and maybe what he knows will start a new age, a golden age of civilization without giants.
One of the interesting things that we have in this case that I don't know that we often see, he was also a business owner. We talked about that. He started the surf company in 2011. So the Facebook page for that company is still up. And the last post on there was a video from July 27th. So that would have been, I don't know, a week and a half or so, or about a week and a half or so before the murders took place. And so I didn't really look at the video, but I'm going to assume that he was a part of this, and or his wife were a part of whatever they were doing for the business a week and a half or so before the murders. So he's keeping this business page up to date, being a good business owner, right? And so that to me shows some kind of stability, right? That he and his wife were able to continue their source of income and continue doing normal things, I guess, very soon before the murder. And so that murders, and that kind of shows me that, maybe there just wasn't anything that his wife would have been able to see as a red flag, because he just continued it seems anyway, I'm speculating, but it seems that he just continued doing the things that he needed to do. All the pictures that we see, him smiling with his family, both kids are in those pictures, so they're at least 10 months, within the past 10 months. His daughter looks older than that, so probably within the past 6 months or so. Smiling, look like a happy, normal family on the beach, doing the things they love to do. And so, yeah, it's strange to go from, there's some odd posts, but it looks largely like they were just continuing to live their life right up until that point. Really strange.
Yeah, I think the argument, so, I can see where this is going to go based on the allegations. At some point, there's going to be a mental health argument where the prosecution is going to be saying, this guy's fine, and the defense is going to be saying, who knows what, psychosis or whatever. Or this is always what happens in these cases, because this is their only play if the government is...
Schizophrenia.
Right. They would go with something, some reality testing thing.
Schizophrenia or antisocial personality disorder.
Yeah, they only have so many they pick from. It almost doesn't matter what he has. They're just going to say, if he has anything, they're going to say, oh, you fit into this pattern. And that's what the defense does. But if I was arguing for the prosecution in a case like this, I think I'd really point to his level of functioning, to what you're saying, Jeff. Like, he's hiding evidence. He's driving. He's interacting with vendors. He's updating Facebook. He's running a business. He's so functional that his wife doesn't even realize what he's up to when he leaves unexpectedly.
Right.
So functional that they can afford a Mercedes Sprinter van. Mm-hmm. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Mercedes are actually kind of pricey.
It's a pricey piece of
Expensive.
machinery. Yeah.
Do we know what his wife does for a living?
I know that I think I read in one of the reports that she started the business with him. So I don't know if she's active in that in some role. I don't know if she has a separate job or not.
I don't know. I haven't been able to find out much about her either. So, like, if it's just that business, they're doing really well for me. I should have learned how to surf. Mm-hmm. Like,
missed opportunities.
Wow. I mean,
And
I can't afford a Mercedes right now. So,
I was just reading here that they have other coaches as part of this business. So there's employees, it seems, for the business as well. So it's not like it's just they do it and hope to make money. It seems to be something that's going pretty well. So yeah, it's.
I wasn't in Southern California. That's why.
That's the place to be for surfing.
It's the place to be for surfing.
Yeah. Where were they in Point Break? What was that? They're the big,
Southern California.
Was that with a big wave? Was there a big wave in that movie? Spoiler alert for Point Break.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, it was a huge wave.
I thought they traveled somewhere exotic to try to chase down that big wave. If I'm thinking of the right movie, if it is Point Break.
I don't remember. I know that the thing was about the storms out in the middle of the Pacific would cause this giant wave to come through, and they were just waiting for that one of a kind wave.
Yeah, it was like the best wave of his career or whatever. Yeah,
that reminds me of an episode of Family, not Family Guy, American Dad. It's another one of those animated TV shows, a classic. The main character Stan, who's in the CIA, is trying to infiltrate this group of surf criminals, right? And it's a whole Point Break. The whole episode is Point Break, but they keep talking about the wave that goes out, right? They're talking like somehow things happen. It's a once in a lifetime thing where like the big wave hits and then it just bounces back and you can ride the wave to the other side of the ocean, right? And it's like it ends with. Patrick Stewart's character, he's brilliant in that. Brilliant. Patrick Stewart's brilliant in everything, but he's brilliant in that as Bullock. Like he fires a rocket at them, trying to kill them because they stole Stan. They stole his friendship.
The alien?
No, it was the kid. It was the criminals became friends with Stan, and Bullock was like completely jealous that they were friends. So he fired a rocket at them, but it went up and it came down. And hit the ocean and actually did push them out.
Who's the alien?
Roger.
Roger.
His name is Roger.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a crash test dummy. You find that out in one episode. He thinks he's the decider, like that he's going to decide the fate of the Earth, but he's just a crash test dummy.
Not an alien lizard.
No, he's just an alien, just a big-headed alien.
Not as lucky to be the lizard too.
No.
Not really a special alien. Yeah. So let's take a look at these conspiracy theories. So a lot of people probably recognize the term Illuminati. The other one was QAnon, and then we have alien lizards. We'll go through each one. The Illuminati is certainly the oldest.
Yeah. I mean, that one started it actually has actual historical standing. The group was started in 1776 in Bavaria, in Ingolstadt. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. I hope so. It's been a long time since I took German. But it was started by a guy named Adam Weishaupt. And his whole thing was trying to get together with people to talk about science and talk about philosophy that was in opposition to the religious influence. In 1776 Bavaria, the government of the city essentially was the church. And they controlled everything. They controlled what was allowed to be taught at the university that Weishaupt worked at. Like I think it was a Jesuit university. Mm-hmm. And so he started just bringing some of his students in and having secret meetings where they could just talk about philosophy and science and other topics that were outside the mainstream of what they had. Right. And that went on. He got actually a huge following within the city for about 10, 15 years. And then he got found out. Mm-hmm. And then he got exiled from the city.
Yes, it's interesting. You think of the Illuminati. Now, a number of groups since then have been called the Illuminati, but that was the first one. And that's where the name came from. Like, he was illuminating, he was enlightening. Mm-hmm. They were like good guys in a sense. They were just trying to be scientists and figure some things out, and they felt like they were being blocked by the people in power. Not an evil group trying to plant explosives in government buildings.
Mm-hmm. No.
Right?
We just want to talk about stuff.
Yeah. That's all. They're just talking. It wasn't even conspiratorial.
No. It had to become conspiratorial for them to be able to hold these meetings.
Right. In that sense, but not. Yeah, they weren't evil.
They weren't trying to. They weren't trying to control the city. Mm-mm. They weren't trying to control people. They were just kind of being like, "Hey, let's come over to my basement. We can talk about this latest book by this guy, philosopher from Venice or whatever." And because it's illegal in the city to talk about this. I have this book, and it's illegal in the city, but I've got it. So come on over to the basement. We'll talk about it there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting that conspiracy theorists view themselves as enlightened, yet they view these guys as the bad guys. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's. I don't know if they really study history too much.
The aversion. Mm-hmm. A version of history.
Yeah, a very special version. Yeah, so that's the Illuminati, and this is one of the groups that Mathew said enlightened him. All right. Then we get to QAnon. Now, QAnon is a much different conspiracy theory.
Yeah. There's a basis between them, though, that is very similar, and that is a sense of anti-intellectualism. The sense of, like, smart people are scary. Like, if you're smart, then you could be trying to manipulate me and control me, and if I'm not so smart, then I'll never realize that you're doing it. I think that's where where the Illuminati comes in, because it was a bunch of intelligent, educated people coming together to talk about stuff behind closed doors. When they were eventually found out, the people who didn't have that knowledge, who weren't as intelligent, were like, what are they up to? Right? I think that's why the Illuminati kind of stuck. Mm-hmm. And it became, adopted by different groups, and ideas about the Illuminati came up, is that sense of anti-intellectualism. And that's also present in QAnon.
One of the things you see in QAnon, they're not very careful about their posts. They're pretty easy to access. They want them everywhere. Is people with fancy educations, not them, but their enemies. Fancy educations. They actually use that term, which I find interesting. So really against pretty much anything at the bachelor's level or above, like anything college related. Right.
I don't think we have a master's degrees. You have a PhD. I don't really think that my education was all that fancy.
I wouldn't describe it as fancy. No,
it was quality, but I wouldn't necessarily say fancy.
Yeah, I would say hard work. That's what stands
Absolutely.
out. Absolutely. Yeah,
I didn't feel like I had to put my pinky up or something while I learned. Right, to imply any level of
while
fanciness.
I'm writing this particular paper, I will keep my pinkies up. This is the fanciness of my.
Of course, you need an accent, because that's how you become fancy.
Of course, you must speak with an accent, especially a faux British accent. That's how you become fancy.
Yes, so this is also, this particular, QAnon, this particular theory is also very, very right-wing. So like sometimes called the alt-right, but either way, it's extreme right. And it specifically involves one person, which I find interesting. Most conspiracy theories don't.
Odd. Most conspiracy theories are just very broad, very general. But there is a broadness and a generality to a lot of QAnon stuff as far as the bad guys go.
Right. Yeah.
I think the bad guys are everyone on the other side. If you're a leader in the Democratic Party or and a very, very far left figure, you're the enemy. It's very polarized view. And
Yeah, I
it's
think
like everybody on that side is the bad guy.
even if you're moderate, conservative, I feel. I mean, they're really far to the right.
Yeah.
I mean, they're extreme. Anyway, their hero, their good guy, is Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's who they picked.
They're going to come and he's going to come and save everything, bring about the storm and the awakening.
Well, I think there are two heroes in this, but Donald Trump is the named one. The other one is, of course, who QAnon is named after, and that is the Q.
Right.
Not the Star Trek character, who's actually seen a surge in popularity right now because season 2 of Star Trek Picard.
Coming back, right?
He's coming back.
Yeah.
John Delancey's coming back, reprising the role of Q. That was a character in Star Trek.
He was in Breaking Bad as well. Or had a small role in Breaking Bad. Yeah. That actor as the father of a person who had some trouble with drugs. Yeah.
So, but Q supposedly is a government official. I think it's Department of Energy. I think he's somewhere in the Department of Energy, who is a whistleblower. He's the hero because he's the whistleblower. He's inside, trying to keep his identity secret, but revealing all of this information because he has access to it.
Yeah, that's what they believe. It turns out that's not true, right? But that's what they believe.
None of that's ever been true.
Yeah, this particular person's figured it all out, knows all the information that nobody else knows or is willing to put out there or something.
He's an insider. I think that's the key for them. Is this is somebody who went behind the curtain and discovered all the secret things and uncovered all these mysteries. So this conspiracy theory essentially says there's an evil organization, mostly Democrats, who are trying to harm children and worship Satan. So they're multitasker.
Well, if we go back to the 80s and look at the Satanic Panic and the daycare scandal, it's Satan worship and pedophilia it's not really multitasking, it's all part of the same thing.
Right? Yeah.
They just happen at the same time, just naturally.
Well, yeah, that's part of the thing.
That's part of it.
Yeah, and this is what they believe. They believe this is a huge conspiracy, right? These evildoers, they refer to them as the deep state, and they are politicians mostly and entertainers. So they're not.
Yeah, the deep state is was adopted by QAnon because that was before QAnon became a thing. But that was the idea that that Democrats and Democratic leadership, like Barack Obama, he left the White House, but he was still secretly controlling the government from a building 2 blocks down, still controlling and manipulating everything. And Donald Trump is trying to break those strings. Donald Trump is trying to do everything he can to stop the deep state from manipulating everything.
He's the ultimate insider because he's a billionaire, right? Donald Trump.
And a president.
And a president.
Maybe a billionaire.
Maybe.
I think he might be now.
He could be. He could be a billionaire. But either way, he has a lot of money. And he's the ultimate insider, elected president. He's going to just tear up everything, expose all these conspirators. He's going to be one that brings the system to its knees. They're really counting on him. Now, of course, when he was elected out of office, when Joe Biden was elected, that was...
Well, again, with QAnon, they've got on that one too, right? Because the idea is the deep state, the Democrats stole that election. They rigged it. It was manipulated through voter fraud, through the mail-in ballots. So it's not a legitimate one. And it's August 20th, so we're 3 days after this, but the supposedly on August 17th,
right.
Donald Trump was supposed to be reinstated as president of the United States according to QAnon conspiracy, because that's the actual date of inauguration for the country of the United States of America. Because according to QAnon, Theodore Roosevelt sold the country, and it's now incorporated as a company. So Biden is the president of the company of the United States, the corporation, and Donald Trump is the president of the country of the United States of America.
Yeah.
And that's all because there's actual wording in one of the documents from Roosevelt that says, incorporated. Right? It uses the word incorporated, but that does not mean that it was made into a federal corporation.
Yes, this is, so conspiracy theories, I've always said they're a lot like Legos, right? You can get any two from any time period, and they will stick together. They're all compatible, right? Even if one's faded or whatever, even if it's a brick that's not made anymore. And when you hear the stuff about the corporation and all this stuff, you think sovereign citizens, right? It's just a retooling the sovereign citizen conspiracy theory, where they all believe that there was some type of bond issued, and they can cash that bond in. The government owes them like $20 million each or something, because of some paperwork around the time of the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence or whatever they believe. So yeah, it's all the same principles, just maneuvered in a different way.
Right. The other similarity to Legos is that if you step on them wrong, you're going to be hurting.
You got to watch where you step around conspiracy theories.
You do have to watch where you step around conspiracy theories, and even more so around Legos.
Probably my favorite part about all this is
Caltrops.
What is that?
I said Legos are caltrops.
Perhaps my favorite part about any conspiracy theory, government related, is that if you're not talking about the conspiracy theory, what these people are capable of, they're usually making fun of these politicians, how stupid they are, how they're not making good decisions, how they're inept at their job, they just can't do anything right, whatever. But the the theory seems to paint them in such a light that they're so smart, that they're doing all these things behind closed doors and getting away with it, and have been doing it for years and decades, and it's been started since the beginning of the country and even before that, whatever. And it paints two completely different pictures for me. On one hand, they're stupid, they can't do their job, they're inept, they're whatever. On another hand, they're so smart, they're able to get away with this stuff, or they're so just capable of getting away with these high-level crimes that nobody's aware of except for these people. They know about it. But nobody else has been able to figure this out. And that's such a juxtaposition that just baffles me, that could possibly, in anybody's mind, happen at the same time.
Yeah, they're putting themselves as more intelligent than everyone else.
Right.
While at the same time being anti-intellectual. So if somebody's considered being a QAnon conspiracy theorist, if they're like, oh, I like this group, I want the pamphlet, let me learn more, they should consider what you're talking about. QAnon thinks that Joe Biden's smart. They really believe that. That alone, I think, should be enough to say, whoa, wait a second, what are you guys doing? What are you talking about? Because I don't see any evidence of that.
I think Joe is of average intelligence, but he has a lot of experience in certain areas that actually I think makes him a fairly decent politician. And he's got a lot of experience as a politician.
Yeah, maybe that's the problem.
He knows the rules, and that is part of the problem. I mean, I get into joking about how, like, when you go into politics, your brains start dribbling out of your ears. But he also has the benefit of having Jill by his side, so she is very intelligent. She is smart.
She is.
But yeah, the conspiracy theories, to Jeff's point, they're like, oh man, Joe Biden is so stupid. Like, he can't even, he started whispering and did you see that? Like, he started whispering $7 billion. Like, he's so stupid. But the Democrats, they're hiding child porn stuff, and they're hiding, messing around with kids in the basement of a pizza shop. In
Washington, D.C.
In Washington, D.C., yeah. At a pizza shop that doesn't have a basement.
Comet Ping Pong.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, what an incident that was. And there you see, one really fired up believer who,
Pizzagate.
Yeah, I can forget his name, but that one guy, he gets in the car, he tries to convince somebody to come with him. The guy's like, yeah, no.
Yeah, no, that's not a thing. Like, are you sure you really want to do that? I'm going.
I'll pass.
I'm going. Didn't you go? He went in there with a gun and tried to force them to take him into the basement and went through the thing into a closet.
Computer closet. He shot the door. Yeah. He had a few guns with him, which of course was illegal already.
Yeah, because not allowed in Washington, D.C.
Yeah. I think he's actually out of prison by now. I think he might be out of prison. I can't remember, but yeah, he regrets his decisions, but he's not sure the conspiracy theory is wrong. That was his last thing I read about that guy.
Right, but he's trying to save the world. Trying to save the world.
He was trying to save the kids.
Trying to save the kids. Trying to save the world from the evil conspiracy. You know, that comes down, and what we see, there's always such I want to say hypocrisy in a lot of this stuff, because it's not thought out. Mm-hmm. It's really not thought out. It's like the Democrats are doing all of this stuff with these kids, but a really conservative best friend of Donald Trump, who's supposed to be the one stopping all of this, is the one who got arrested for running a ring of trafficking.
Yeah, they don't worry about contradictions.
No, they don't. But the thing is with Jeffrey Epstein, because there's a reference to Jeffrey Epstein, people on both sides of the aisle will post the Epstein didn't kill himself thing. And I don't know. I don't know. It is a little bit weird for the cameras that have been working for the entire time he was in there to suddenly go out. All of the cameras suddenly go out for like a 2-hour time period. Yeah,
it's granted it was certainly bizarre. I think the most likely explanation though is he did bring an end to his life. But I can understand why people are like, we should investigate, and how the investigation seems unsatisfactory. And then Ghislaine Maxwell gets charged, kind of out of the blue, when she's been free for years. Now all of a sudden you have evidence, but they're doing their best to keep her alive, though.
Yeah,
they're not going to let her
doing everything they can to keep her alive, which I think lends credibility to the fact that Epstein killed himself, because they're doing all sorts of things to make sure that Ghislaine Maxwell does not have the ability or the opportunity to be able to do that.
We should look at that case at some point, because that's a tough case.
It is,
and I think it was being tried this fall, and I think maybe it's pushed back again. I don't know. It got pushed back from July. It would have already been, the trial would have already occurred.
COVID threw the courts into chaos.
I think, well, it did, but I think in this particular case, her defense actually asked for the first extra time, and I don't know what stalled it, if it is stalled, but yeah, it's like she's sitting in jail, and she's presumed innocent, so that's a concern. I can understand their fear about her taking off, though, because she seems pretty well equipped to disappear.
Yeah. The money she's gotten.
Right.
Yeah, and she's also a French citizen.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's actually incredibly intelligent, right? She has all types of training, and she could probably get away. Although
if she really wanted to, she could.
Yeah,
and if she got out of
the strange thing,
out on bail or something like that, she would be gone.
The strange thing is why she stayed in the United States. Right, she could have left many times. Yeah, but then was like,
I think she did several times. Like, she took trips. She wasn't.
But she lived here.
She lived here, but she took trips to France. She went to England. She's high-powered business
socialite.
Socialite. Yeah. She's got interests everywhere. She was traveling and then coming home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll take a look at that case.
Yeah.
So QAnon has kind of two events too. So this makes it a little different than other conspiracy theories. Like Illuminati, these are just secret guys causing trouble. But QAnon has these very distinct stages. They have the storm and the Great Awakening. These are two things that they believe are going to happen. So the storm is when the evildoers that we're talking about get arrested. And they're sent to Guantanamo Bay, I believe.
Yeah.
They're very specific, not Attica. Going to Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah, they're sent to Guantanamo because that's where the torture happens, and I think that's part of the allure for some people of coming into this particular conspiracy theory. Is like who they consider to be the bad guys are going to get their comeuppance. So they're not just going to get arrested and sent to jail, but these people who are engaging in child trafficking and all of this stuff, they're going to really get it. They're not just going to jail. They're going to Guantanamo. They're going to Gitmo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They also could have said the Florence Supermax. That's pretty bad. Ted Kaczynski's there. A lot of other high-profile criminals.
Yeah, but Gitmo is much more public. Like people know a lot more about it, especially since the the torture allegations from the CIA from early 2000s. Like it's a lot more. It's a bigger thing. It's a bigger deal. And then there's movies like Harold and Kumar Escape from Guantanamo Bay.
It could be the inspiration. Yeah, so they're going to be arrested, right? The evildoers, and then you have the Great Awakening, and I find this one to be the best, really. This is where everyone will realize that the conspiracy theorists were right all along, and they will be glorified for it, presumably, thousands of years, however long they live. Like, everyone will be so grateful because they caught the bad guys and sent them to Guantanamo Bay.
So I picture this this whole thing, Storm and then the Great Awakening, and I'm thinking, why would they send them to Guantanamo if everybody's going to be awakened to this and everybody's going to be exposed? Wouldn't all these people that are aware of this now, wouldn't they just want everyone like in the public square and just be like, I don't know, beaten out there or like tortured out there or something? If everybody's aware of this now and they did so many horrible things and now everybody knows about it, wouldn't they just be able to just publicly in the streets? I mean, like, I guess like they used to. Wouldn't that just be the scene at that point? Just this mass chaos and the people who are right about this are now in control of things. I picture that's what it would more look like as opposed to here's a jail.
Yeah, I think the problem is you're using logic on.
You got me.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, if you let that creep in, you'll never understand conspiracy
You'll
theories.
never understand it. Like Gitmo is the place. It's
really got to be the place. You're right.
It really does hold a lot of similarities to certain religious beliefs, like hell. Like people go to hell because they did the wrong thing, right? Well, the people who are doing these things are going to go to Gitmo because that's here. And maybe they'll go to hell because they're worshiping Satan. Of course, they're going to go to hell, but they're buddy with him, right? Because they're worshiping. So if they go to hell, it's not going to be bad. So it has to be here on Earth, worst place we can think of, Gitmo,
where they can get what's coming to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Just doing it in the streets isn't going to be good enough because it's got to last.
Got to last. Yeah. Yeah. Because maybe they find some way to live forever at that point, the people who have revealed all this, and so maybe that's just an eternity of torture for them.
Yeah, so that's their thing, and this reminds me kind of their glorified stage. Reminds me of the incels, right? The who were they? One was Alec Manassian up in Canada, the van attack, and there's another famous one in California, who's really like the Elliot Rodger, right? Those are the two, big figures there. And, in there, it's not really a conspiracy theory, but it's these socially awkward people who are mad at attractive women.
Right. For people who don't know what the term incel is, it's involuntary celibate. It's people who do believe that, men mostly.
Mostly. Yeah.
I think 99% men who believe that members of the opposite sex are specifically denying them the opportunity to have sex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're very mad. They call them Chads and Stacys, right? Stacys. So you have Chads are attractive men, and Stacys are attractive women. And the Chads and the Stacys they connect sexually, and the incels are left out of that. And they're mad. They want to hurt the Chads and be with the Stacys. But the incels believe they will have an incel uprising, at the beta male uprising, and they will take over and be with the Stacys, like just basically hanging out with them, right? Like spending time having sex, and the Chads will be like groveling, like, "Oh, why did we ever offend you? We're so sorry. We were having sex with these women." so again, being glorified is an important part,
right? And it's still always funny to me when we talk about things and people have embraced the whole alpha beta thing, which is complete nonsense. It is not true at all. It stems from The Wolf. Right, a book in 1979, I think. I can't remember the author's name. He went out and was studying wolves and noticed this pattern of behavior, wrote this book, said wolves can, alphas and betas and these outliers and things like that, and then got an opportunity to spend, after it was published, it became hugely popular. People loved the book. A few years later, he got an opportunity to go study wolves actually in the wild in like Canada and up in Alaska. and he noticed that their behaviors were completely different, and that it's more like family units, where you have the male and the female working together to raise the children until they're able to go off on their own. And he's like, "Oh crap, I was wrong." And he tried to go to the publisher and say, "Pull the book, pull it off the shelf. This is wrong. We got to get rid of it." And the publisher was like, "No, it's making us money." Money. But then the whole idea of alpha, beta kind of hit, and people started like, "This applies to human beings too." It doesn't, because a person who might be an alpha in one group, completely beta in another.
Yeah,
like the people the alpha, typical alpha male, the one who takes charge and is just like super charismatic and super like dominant in all these situations. You put that guy in a basement with a bunch of nerds playing D&D, and he's probably going to be like, "What's going on? I don't get it."
Right, there's no universal dominance trait.
It's not a universal dominance trait, and then so. That's the whole problem with like the incel thing, is it's based on that premise.
Well, clearly they found a way to relate to each other of, we are people that are they feel looked down upon by women, by these attractive men and, whoever else. And they kind of relate with this idea of, they consider us less than, but we're not, we're going to rise up. We're going to show them what we're really worth. And you're going to be sorry that you ever doubted us or whatever. And I think that they're associated too with some of them anyway, violence towards women or endorsing violence towards women, and just that's their way of payback. You didn't like us, and now this is our way of payback towards you. So it's pretty dangerous for.
I believe that
some
there are
people.
groups of incels and specific incels who do advocate for that. It's like, if you're a woman, then you're automatically bad because
You're the enemy.
You are the enemy. Yeah. And all of that is actually absolutely terrible. A lot of it, I think, based on poor self-esteem and
vindictiveness, sadism, revenge. Like largely this population is socially awkward. Mm-hmm. They don't fit in. They don't have social skills. They communicate with each other online. They don't even meet in person. And I think that's really the issue that they probably need to work on. But instead, they're taking their frustration and converting into violence.
It can't be me. It has to be other people.
Yeah.
So then there's an aspect, a bit of narcissism present in that as well, as it's, it can't be me. I can't be the problem. It's got to be other people. So if it's not me, if I'm not the problem, it's got to be women. Like, I want to engage in a relationship with women. I want to have sex, but they won't let me. Mm-hmm. Right? Well, if you worked on your social skills and you worked on your self-esteem and you went to therapy a little bit, you might be able to, go have a polite and meaningful conversation with someone and start forging a relationship that might result in a sexual encounter. But that's too much work. Like, I'd rather sit and bitch about it on the internet.
Yeah, and I don't know if they have the social skills to maneuver to the level that they think, like in terms of, they think they should have wide access to many different women, many potential. Yeah. The market for them is probably more restricted because the people would have to get past the social skill problems, which some people will. Some people are like, okay, a person's awkward. But that's going to eliminate a percentage of potential mates. Yeah. They don't want that. They want everybody.
And there are a large number of them who just seem to have that sense of entitlement. Like, I should be allowed to just take my pick. Mm-hmm. Like, if I'm walking down the street and I point, I should be able to take what I want from that person. Mm.
Yeah.
In the sexual arena, because they would never think about it with anything else. Mm-mm. They wouldn't be walking down the street and be like, "I like your car. Give me your car.
I'm entitled to your car.
I'm entitled to your car."
Right.
No.
Yeah, they believe sex with, again, anyone they want is a basic human right, not just sex. Mm-hmm. Right? And it's a dangerous ideology that has ended up in causing fatalities. But again, Legos, right? That fits right in.
Yeah.
And much like the Illuminati, the ideas from this stem from a much earlier age. In the Victorian era, there was several different types of books and journal articles written about how men and women are men are sexual creatures. Men are driven by the need to have sex, and men are powerless against the urge to have sex, and therefore, if a woman is placed before them and the man wants to have sex, they're going to do everything they can to have that sex. But women, on the other hand, are not sexual creatures. So it's their responsibility to be the gatekeepers for that. And all that was like that means that wives are responsible for making sure their husbands are satiated before they leave, and shouldn't ever get mad at them if they actually stray when they're out there. It was all a terrible, terrible thing to try and justify men doing whatever they wanted when it came to sex, to justify any kind of assault on women. But it stuck because enough men were like, this makes a lot of sense. And it stuck around, and we still have some aspects of that where we see people say things almost just like that. If you watch any episode of Maury, the Maury Povich show, you're going to hear somebody say, I'm a man. I wasn't going to say no. Like, I couldn't say no. I'm a man. Like that's the excuse. Like, you cheated on your significant other, and your excuse is, I'm a man. I've got needs. Yeah. I'm a man too, and I do have needs, but I also know that my actions are dictated by my decision-making process, not by a biological urge in most cases. My urge to breathe is a biological urge
Yes.
that I can actually overturn. I can hold my breath
Temporarily.
for a while. But the sexual action is not a biological need in the same way.
Right, it's not inevitable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now looking at the last theory that influenced Coleman, and this is one that we've talked about a couple times: alien lizard humanoids. Often credited to David Icke, but actually it's been around a long time.
Yeah, a long time.
So it's very similar to Illuminati, except the conspirators are also aliens. They're shape-shifting, which works pretty well.
Yeah, shape-shifting aliens, because they have this amazing technology and magic and just natural ability to be able to shape-shift in whatever form they want to be.
Yeah, they came here a long time ago, 250,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Quite some time. And they manipulated DNA of people on Earth, and they're passing it on. As we talked about, it stays constant in the population. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to make things bad here on Earth so that people will be unhappy. This creates negative energy, which they can then transmit back to their dimension or home or wherever they come from.
And the alien lizard humanoids, as I mentioned earlier, and in the David Icke podcast, are very highly associated with the Anunnaki of ancient Babylonian religious stuff from the Mesopotamian era, things like that. But they're so widely accepted in so many different conspiracy theories. There's a bunch of different explanations for where they come from, why they're here, when they got here. Like 250,000 years ago is kind of in some of them. Others are like they live on the planet Nibiru, which is the 10th planet or 11th planet in the solar system, and it orbits out and comes back in. And when they're close, they somehow, for some reason, they need gold to power everything. They need gold. So they come here. In ancient times, they came here to get our ancestors to enslave them so that they could mine all of the gold. And then that explains why so many ancient, civilizations have so many golden artifacts.
Sounds a little bit like Stargate.
Yeah. Well, Stargate drew on these conspiracy theories because they predated. And the whole, the pyramids were built as landing zones. That was way before Stargate. Just Stargate popularized it. Mm-hmm. The movie Stargate, which is really good.
Yeah, Kurt Russell, right?
Kurt Russell, again, in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I really liked Stargate, and I liked the series. I liked the Atlantis one. I thought Stargate worked at so many levels. And they didn't really talk about they had the alien that would embed in people, like live in other people, the alien race.
Daul or
right. Yeah.
I didn't watch a lot of Stargate because I liked Sliders better.
Okay, yeah.
Sliders was a great show. I love that show. Underrated show, but great.
It was a golden age for sci-fi.
Oh, yeah.
So we see Anthony Quinn Warner. This is a guy who set off a bomb in Nashville, Tennessee on Christmas Day in 2020. He believed in alien lizards. He actually hunted them unsuccessfully in a local park. Can't imagine why he couldn't catch any.
Weird.
They should be everywhere,
it's
right?
Odd. Apparently they are everywhere. They are sneaky, and they are shapeshifters. So it could be that he was onto one.
Yeah.
and lost sight of it. And then the dog that ran out the thing was because it got onto him, figured it out.
It could have been all around him. I mean, he might not have the right test to understand who they were.
Could have turned into a tree.
Yeah.
You underestimate shapeshifters at your own risk, but they can turn into anything. If that's something I learned from Star Trek, Deep Space Nine. Again, sorry, Jeff, for another Star Trek reference.
I got it.
One of the characters on that show is a shapeshifter.
Oh, okay. Well, that's convenient.
He was the constable. He was actually like the law on the space station. He was a shapeshifter. His name was Odo.
So, but he wasn't alien lizard.
No, he was fluid.
Okay.
He was actually a fluid. Started as a fluid and then could become a solid form.
Okay.
Yeah. But he could be in anything. He could be any shape he wanted to be. Like, he used that to his advantage in investigations too. Like, he'd just be a chair in the bar, listening.
That's pretty convenient.
Yeah, it's an expensive plot device, I imagine, in terms of special effects.
Oh yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Really expensive. That's why they didn't do it very often.
He mostly just looks like him.
Yeah, he mostly just looks like him. And there were a couple of seasons there where he was made solid so that they didn't have to do that at all.
If I can, something that I can relate that to for, like, I never watched science fiction stuff, but when I was growing up, we had Secret World of Alex Mack on Nickelodeon.
I love that show on Nickelodeon.
So when you were talking about
I remember that from
Liquid and all that, that's something she did. So
similar special effect, actually at a similar time period.
Yeah.
Late 90s.
Yeah, I was trying to see when that came on, and that was 94 to 98. So yeah, mid to late 90s. So I guess that was a pretty popular concept.
Yeah.
Being able to liquid, shapeshift, go around, do different things, and be kind of unknown to the world around you.
Yeah, Deep Space Nine was 93 to 99, so they were contemporary with each other.
There you go.
What about the Wonder Twins? You've heard the Wonder Twins?
Wonder Twin powers activate.
Shape of
Jan and Jaina. Shape of pterodactyl. Form of water. There's always water.
Well, couldn't he do ice things too?
Yeah, he could do ice things too.
Yeah.
It's like I think he got the shaft on that one. Like in the powers, she got the better powers. Like, I could turn into Godzilla if I want. And you're going to turn into a popsicle this time?
Ice sculpture.
My ice sculpture of Godzilla.
Yeah, and the plot devices always worked out, so they could barely reach each other. Well, we reach harder. We can activate the powers because they had these rings.
Yeah,
right?
they had the rings.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Super Friends.
That's right.
It was on the Super Friends from the 60s.
That was DC, right?
DC, it was.
Yeah. So that's Mathew Coleman. He has many conspiracy theories he brought together, and of course, in his case, committed allegedly a horrible crime, and really distinguished himself, among these conspiracy theorists. Most of them don't commit crimes.
Yeah. Some of them become actually incredibly famous. The Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think she's one of the most famous QAnon supporters right now. Arguably more famous than the QAnon shaman.
Yeah, right.
The guy who wore like the buffalo headdress on January 6th. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, she keeps herself in the media by spouting these conspiracy theories, and it's dangerous because she is an official in the government. Mm-hmm. She's a congressperson.
Yeah, she's elected. Yeah, there was actually people that voted for her.
Yeah,
yeah. I think a lot of tweets and things did predate her election, but she bought that election. I think it's pretty clear. It's like she moved to a county that didn't have someone running so that she could get voted in. And then she spent a lot of money
to get it.
To get it. She bought that election pretty clearly. And it wasn't because people, I don't think it was because people liked her policies. I think she was basically running unopposed. Like the opposition didn't have the ability to pump out the advertisements that she could.
Yeah.
But she's in Congress right now and still spouting all sorts of things that could be incredibly dangerous. It could incite more people to violence. And the thing that gets me about her is something completely different from that. It's the when the media calls her MTG, like they just use her initials. In the geek community, there's a game called Magic the Gathering. It's a card game, been around since the early 90s. And that is very often abbreviated as MTG. So the first time I was reading an article and saw MTG, I was like, what, Magic the Gathering? And it's like the headline was like, MTG spouts nonsense, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, what, Magic the Gathering? Oh, no, Marjorie Taylor Greene, right.
We almost had our own similar politician in Delaware. She was running, and I'm trying to look up her name because I forget it now.
Oh, I know who you mean.
She's down in Sussex County, down in the lower county in Delaware. Yeah. And she would post some...
as we call it, lower, slower Delaware.
Yeah, she would post some strange things. Very much, I mean, yeah, conspiracy.
I don't remember. She was
conspiratorial things.
As a Republican.
Yeah, and
yeah.
Rather, she didn't gain a lot of traction, but I mean enough to make you really wonder, like, you know, who's okay with this? And people would bring up points about like, you know, well, I'd rather have that her and what she supports in terms of, you know, other different issues rather than the Democrat and whatever they support. But she had some really dangerous ideas in terms of...
Is it Lauren Witzke?
Yeah, Witzke, Lauren Witzke, yeah. She had some really dangerous ideas in terms of, you know, the way that she viewed, from my perspective, people in general, especially minority communities and things. She wasn't afraid to post about them either. It's not like she had any shame about it. It's just, you know, these are my beliefs and immigration and things like that, which a lot of it went along with the Republican Party's ideals, you know, but some of it was going really far right. And that's not the kind of thing, you know, Delaware being largely a liberal state, Sussex County, Lower County, much different in general in terms of political ideology. But it was such a contrast, you know, to what we would normally see in Delaware. But she gained traction, and I think that said a lot about maybe a changing landscape. What we might see politically, at least in Delaware. It was strange. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, it's a highly engaged small base. Mm-hmm. They come out, they make themselves known.
Yeah.
But again, I think if you really believe, and there's a frightening part to this too. If you really believe these things, you must be scared. Right? Like, you really believe it's on you to save the world.
Yeah.
And you believe you're right. I mean, there's something, you know, dangerous about thinking that you're right.
Yeah. I was going to relate all this to a possible relationship between this case that we're talking about, Mathew Taylor Coleman, and Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, another fairly recent case. My understanding, and I don't think there's been any...
We'll have to cover that one
a
lot more.
I don't think there's been any trials yet.
There hasn't.
But my understanding as of right now, based on emails and other communication that they've seen from Lori, is that she had potentially had some kind of belief about evil spirits or some kind of evilness in her daughter and her son, who they suspect that they killed and buried on Chad's property. But a similar kind of thing. They've email and other communication between Lori and other people, including Chad, saying things about, you know, getting the evil spirits out of them, working on, you know, different religious things and how that related to the kids. And I see a correlation there. Like you said, Dr. Grande, about they must really believe these things to get to the point of, I need to do something about it. I have such a weight on my shoulder that I need to kill someone to save people, to save the world, or to, you know, get this evil spirits out of them or whatever. And that's, of course, it's dangerous in and of itself, but when you get to that point, of course, it's deadly. And that's just scary to think there's people out there who, you know, just they go on vacation after they kill their kids, you know, or they just are on a leisurely day trip and kill their kids because that's how they're going to save the world. There's a lot to that.
Mm-hmm. And they allegedly went to Hawaii and got married after the crime was committed.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the dangerous part, right? They seem highly functional, and so did Mathew Coleman.
Yeah. Right? And Chad Daybell was well known before that for his ideologies, and
he was a self-publisher.
Yeah, had successful business and things like that.
Yeah, and he had a small but very motivated audience that would, I guess, buy his stuff. Mm-hmm. And Lori became one of those audience members, and then we have all these, everything's an allegation now, but it appears as though she may have been involved in killing a husband, and Chad may have killed his wife, and then like there's a lot of killing.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, they're almost like hitmen. When you go through their story, it's incredible. They're just taking people out left and right. I mean, and getting away with it. Like one murder was ruled a self-defense situation.
Right.
And it wasn't Lori that pulled the trigger. It was her brother, who's now conveniently dead. Yeah. But that's an amazing story. We will have to cover.
Yeah, we'll have to cover that one too. Yeah. We were speaking about Lauren Witzke, and she actually was a QAnon advocate for a while. Right. But during her campaign to try and become a state senator, which failed, she tried to distance herself from QAnon. Mm-hmm. And arguably, she didn't do it by saying, like, oh, no, that's like, I don't really believe those things. She's quoted as saying, QAnon is mainstream psyops to get people to trust the plan and not do anything. Like, she tried to turn it around. This is a conspiracy theory about a conspiracy theory. Like, she's nested this like the Marashka dolls, like the Russian nesting dolls. Like, she's got a conspiracy theory inside a conspiracy theory, which is probably inside another conspiracy theory.
I remember when Trump answered questions about the conspiracy theories.
They sound like really smart people.
Yeah, he was always like careful not to alienate that base, but he also didn't want to alienate the people that were against them. He wasn't super careful, but he was trying. Like, he was trying to, well, I don't know much about them, but they seem like nice guys.
Is that a compliment or an insult? I don't really. I think I should go save the world. If there's something I can do, I should go save it.
Yeah. And people would ask him, "Do you condemn them?" Well, I condemn them, but right, like he would say the word, but then he would go right to again, they're all right guys. A lot of them are pretty good people. They have a good point. Yeah.
Well, I think that was actually a reference to the Proud Boys, or the white supremacist group. It's like, do you condemn white supremacy and the Proud Boys? Oh, well, there are some really fine people on
both sides.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that was years ago. That was Charlottesville, but yeah, there's crickets. Like I think just as any real politician in this country, when asked a question like, do you condemn white supremacy? Would immediately, yes, I condemn white supremacy.
Yeah, it's an easy answer.
That is not a good thing. We should be working to be together and form our country and try and turn it into an opportunity to bring people together. Mm-hmm. But Donald Trump, when asked that question, was kind of like crickets for a couple seconds and then kind of danced around the issue. I'm like, the problem with doing that is now you look like you're supporting them, which I've never met him. I don't know his personal beliefs. From what I've seen of the public face, the answer would be yes. He supports white supremacists. But again, that could be a character. Who he is behind closed doors could be completely different from who he tweets as.
Well, I mean,
people do it all the time.
And that makes him just seem like any old politician, that he's able to give an answer that suits the needs of his base or the desires of his base. And maybe he is different behind closed doors. Maybe he's not. I don't know. But that makes him seem like just the opposite of what he said he was. I'm not a politician. I'm not one of them. I'm drain the swamp, all that. But it kind of sounds just like a politician. You're going to give them what they want to hear, whether you can support it or not, which we could say for probably any politician, but especially someone who's running against that ideal. And that's not a good look either, So not only saying that white supremacy is bad, but also just going right to the base, no matter what it is, and just being able to say the right answer, what they want to hear.
Right. And the right answer can change. Going back to The Simpsons, and we've talked about this episode before. There's the Treehouse of Horrors, Kang and Kodos running. It was the funniest thing. Kang, I think it was Kang, or it was Kodos up on the stage. It was like, abortions for all, boo! Abortions for none, boo! Abortions for some, miniature American flags for others. Yay! Like that's how you politic, right? Essentially, it's a caricature of it, but you try and take the pulse of the room and figure out what's going on. And the pulse of the room, when he was asked that question, was, "Please say no." Right. I think everybody in the room at that debate was like, "Please say no. Just say no. Just say you don't support it." Like all of his followers were like, "Just say no," and everybody else was like, "Is he going to say no? Is he going to say he doesn't support them?" And then just like danced around it, which is, I think, to me more the more businessman person kind of thing. Like I've got to make myself look good in this moment rather than try and find the answer that's going to satisfy the most people.
I think what happened with Trump is he wanted everyone to like him. And then he realized, okay, two-party system, I'm only going to have half. And then he couldn't really even keep that half motivated to like him. So it was just, I feel like he kept losing.
So my big theory on Trump is there's a card game called Cards Against Humanity. It's actually a really fun game. It's really funny. Can be really out there. In the rules, it talks about how you earn awesome points. And when you get enough awesome points, you win the game. Right? One of the rules on how to gain an awesome point is called the U.S. president. And that is, if you declare your intention to run for presidency, then you run for the presidency and win, you get an awesome point. And I think that Donald Trump decided to run because he wanted the awesome point. Like he was losing in a game and he was like, "I'm going to become president." And 4 years later, he's like, "I got that awesome point." It's completely ridiculous, but it's as plausible as anything else in the conspiracy theory world.
But these last two presidents, Trump and Biden, for different reasons, I don't like either one. And I feel like this whole time period just needs to get past. We get to somebody different. Just pull a different card from the deck.
I mean, I will admit right here, when President Obama ran the first time, I had choices to make, right? And I didn't like, who he ran against, was it McCain?
John McCain.
Right?
Yeah.
So I didn't like McCain. I didn't really like Obama either because I tried to listen. I try and make my decisions based on the politics that they have rather than, just gut decisions, whether I like it. So I didn't like the policies of either one of them. I was like, oh, it's a coin flip on that one. So let me take a look at their vice presidential picks. And it's like, Joe Biden, I hate Joe Biden. I'm voting for McCain because I hate Joe Biden. It wasn't that I was voting for McCain. I was voting against Biden because I didn't really want to see him. I had personal reasons that didn't have to do with politics, my personal opinions about Joe Biden as a person. I was like, I don't like him, so I'm going to vote the other side. But then I saw the job that Obama was doing in the White House, and I said, and when it came to the second term, I was like, I'm voting for him. Because he showed me that he's what he's capable of, and I approve of that.
Yeah, it was flexible thinking, right? And I think large portions of the population are just married to a party, and But I don't know if we didn't have any good choices last time. It was Trump or Biden. We lose either way. So usually, like years ago, it was kind of two good people. You could pick one.
It depends.
Or two mediocre people. Yeah, most of the time. But now, I don't know. Of course, everybody is made bad, and this kind of ties back to this topic. Everybody is made bad because we can look at their behavior in the past and say, they made a mistake once, so therefore I don't like them.
Which goes back to the social media thing. Like the social media is so rife with everything people have done in the past that now we'll have these experts going and digging, looking for things for all of their candidates. In the case of people like Donald Trump, there's just too much to find. Just so much.
Yeah, it wasn't one thing.
It wasn't one thing. It was everything. Everything from the covfefe to the very fine people on both sides. It was, and that's that's one of the reasons why I disliked him as president. And one of the things, I'm okay with Biden right now because we don't see those kinds of tweets. We don't see the president spending all of his time trying to call up Fox News and have an interview on the while
That's right.
He's actually doing something in the White House that doesn't involve trying to be in the public eye. And I don't know whether that's trying to take a nap.
Yeah, I feel
or
like
whispering to the wall outlet or something, or whether it's actually doing the job of president. But
he seems to be dodging questions, and that's, it's like, all right.
That's politicians for you.
Yeah, well, he's good at that, right? And it feels like in the time we're making this video, the whole Afghanistan thing's going on. Terrible, terrible loss of life, uncalled for, unnecessary. And instead of Biden saying, I messed that up, which, okay, I'm not pleased with that, but at least that tells me he's going to try to fix it. Instead, it's the Afghan people are responsible. Their military failed. Really? And then he's blaming everyone else. His advisors never told him things that they're saying they did tell him. That worries me more than a lot of other behavior we see from politicians. Like, just own it. Like, clearly he messed up. We all know it. He's the only one who's like, yeah, I didn't do that. Like, we need to move past that and start working on a solution. We can play the blame game later on. But for now, we have to save lives. Terrible. So, and he's also blaming Trump and every other president that's been in Afghanistan. And
a lot of the situations that occur during a single president's presidency are based on things that happened in previous.
They all have to deal with that obstacle.
But it's because it's the United States that did it. And you have to, if you're going to lead the country, you have to accept the mantle of what happened in the previous administration. But we always, everybody wants to, this is a clean start.
Yeah.
Inauguration means this is a new age. But no, there's still stuff going on from 20 years ago that we have to pick up the pieces of. And, we got 2003 going into Iraq. So all of this stuff impacted. So we're going back. We're on way back. And then further back than that, Iran-Contra and all sorts of just it. And then you can go back 2,000 years to all the troubles in that general area of the world. But, maybe we can blame it on Britain for breaking up India into Pakistan, Afghanistan, and India. They screwed up there.
Yeah, there's always a lot of historical blame to go on. But, so we'll have to see how this all works out. But I don't think we've lucked out with politicians lately. Not for the presidency and not with a few other positions either. But
and what's weird about that? I think we should be able to find an independent candidate who could do but we're stuck with you only get the Republican or the Democrat. It's a two-party system. It's not a two-party system, but like I think I've said in previous videos, 23% of registered voters are Democrat and 22% are Republican. The vast majority of voters are independent. Registered as independent. Why do we only have two parties?
Yeah, why can't we think on a continuum? Like you're talking about evaluating Barack Obama and John McCain and saying, well, this time I like McCain. But then, later on saying, well, now...
Well, I didn't like either one of them.
Well, yeah, I'm going to vote for him.
I'm going to vote for him because I don't personally like Biden.
Right. And then later on saying, well, Barack Obama didn't do too bad. Right? I mean, that's the way I kind of feel like voting should work. Instead, it's largely party, and that's what the candidates are kind of banking on too. Like they're not even really trying. Biden didn't even really try to get other voters. He said he did, but then outlining his policies, it's clear he was speaking to his base. And Trump did the same thing the other way. Like no one's really been an across the aisle person. No one. And I don't know if we'll ever get back to that, but maybe independents start winning.
If they do, it'd be wonderful. I mean, the aisle. There is a trend of the aisle just widening over the last 25 to 30 years. And part of that is our communication technology, the speed at which things get out. It's put a schism. More the faster the news cycle is, the bigger that split gets.
One of the things that I hate that we have here in Delaware is to be able to vote in the primary, you have to adhere to a certain party, and
I never get to vote in the primaries because I'm registered independent.
Right. And so that it makes me, I've had to change my affiliation depending on who I wanted to vote for in the primary. And it just seems like that creates more of a divide than anything. Because you have to either change it or you're going to vote with the party that you want to, and it seems like it's rules created perhaps by a certain party to benefit them. But then, of course, sometimes it doesn't benefit them. So it seems like, well, why would that even happen? Because it doesn't seem to benefit anyone, ultimately, especially not the voters. And so I think there's a lot of things that contribute to the system of, we only see two parties, when in reality there's much more than that. A lot of really small things that really contribute to this huge problem.
Yeah. Yeah, politics has become a business. And I don't really see it working out in the near future, but maybe, who knows? Maybe.
And a business asset.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think one of the eeriest quotes I can think of was from a TV show, but it still is true, as a corrupt businessman on the show is like, the best investment a company can make is to buy themselves a senator.
Yeah.
But it's true.
It's
like
true.
companies jump behind, giving millions of dollars to senators. I think we should adopt like the government in England does. Like you have 6 weeks to campaign, and you can't have more than a certain amount, and the government ensures that you have everybody has the same amount of time on public access television.
Can you imagine that?
On the BBC, any of the BBC channels, like as long as it's not a private network, they get the same amount of time in the similar time slots.
Mm-hmm. So people would have to effectively communicate and think their arguments through.
Right?
Strange.
Yeah, I don't know if they could handle that.
I don't know if the United States can handle that.
Yeah. So, yeah, we've covered a lot of things here, but certainly, speaking to the point, reputation, going back to Mathew Coleman and the social media and how people look for things, and I think with Coleman, we see that you can structure his past in light of what he allegedly did, and see kind of all kinds of strange things. There are some bizarre things, but ultimately, I think if he did it because he did subscribe to these conspiracy theories. Like this is what he moved to. So the question becomes, was he bad or evil? And then, or I should say, was he good? And then QAnon came along and made him bad? Or did he have a paranoid, grandiose delusion and then adopted what was out there and incorporated that into his system of belief?
It seems more likely to me.
That's the way I always think of delusions. Again, I don't know if he has delusions, but if he could just be lying and making this up.
He could be.
But if he's delusional, I look at delusions like dreams, right? You have some experiences, especially recent ones, and then you dream about it. You might also dream like you're in second grade or whatever, but a lot of times it's fairly recent material. I wonder if delusions aren't the same way, that people have this break from reality somehow, however they work mechanically in the brain, and they see things like Illuminati and QAnon and alien lizards. Oh, that makes sense. They believe something kind of like I'm paranoid. They don't say that, but internally somehow I'm paranoid. They're paranoid. We're brothers.
Those beliefs are similar to my beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's consistent with my fears about the government and whatever, right? So they bring those in, and it doesn't really matter if they make sense. They mismatch them. They put QAnon with Illuminati, with the alien lizards. It doesn't matter. Just, I need some content. I need some fuel for this delusion, some framework. That's it. I don't know.
He's getting arraigned on August 31st, right? At least that's what it's what it's scheduled for. So we'll get to see if he pleads guilty, not guilty, or how they proceed with that. So maybe within 11 days, maybe we'll know a little bit more. And I don't know. Obviously, it's probably going to take a few years to get to the point of having a trial or seeing any kind of evidence potentially. But it certainly is a strange case. I was thinking about the movie A Beautiful Mind. Mm-hmm. And for people who don't experience delusions or hallucinations or anything, seeing a cinematic view of that, just kind of this perception of what that might be like for somebody, and somebody getting to the point of believing something so much that they're even putting others in danger. So in the movie, of course, his I think it's his son is in the bathtub, and he thinks the hallucination is watching him, of course, but there's nobody there watching. The kid almost drowns. I think there was another thing. Somebody he hit he thought he was hitting this person that he was created, but he accidentally hit his wife or knocked his wife and kid down or something along those lines. So yeah, it just gets to this point of not being able to understand what's reality and what's not. I have these things that my mind has created, delusions or hallucinations, and they feel so real that they might get to the point of acting on it, might get to the point of doing whatever it is that this thing in their mind potentially tells them to do or they have to do to solve this problem or whatever. And it's scary to think about that there's people out there that might just go from 0 to 100, like we see potentially with Mathew Coleman. He might go from 0 to 100, going from, nobody really suspected anything, not even his wife. His friends would say, he recently started believing more in these conspiracy theories. But yeah, really to go from nothing just to murdering his children is just scary.
It's the speed of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of people who have schizophrenia and who otherwise have delusions, right? Brief psychotic disorder, delusional disorder, bipolar disorder with psychosis. And one of the things that I found kind of interesting in interacting with them is at some point in that counseling relationship, you're always going to say something like, look, demons aren't talking to you. It's some chemicals and some other things in your brain. Like, they're not real. I'm real. You're real. This room is real. Mother and father are trying to take care of you. Real. Demon's not real. So let's go through this again. And they'll say, okay, I'm real. You're real. Whatever. Demon's not real. You understand the demons aren't real, right? You understand the TV's not talking to you. I understand. And then 2 weeks later, they're in the hospital, right? They get out. They come in.
The demon told me to punch the TV.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. What happened? Oh, well, the demons were talking to me. Like, whoa, how do we even get there? We already determined. But it's not like a choice they're making.
Yeah.
They really are imposed upon by the psychosis. It's very cruel. It's a very cruel symptom set. Because you can talk to them. You can have moments where there's lucidity, right? They're like, I get it. I get it now. I understand what you're saying. But they don't really.
Yeah.
They don't really ever get it. Is what in the more severe cases, that's what I've noticed. You can look in their eyes and you can tell they're not even thinking about what you're saying. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the next thing they say is a tangent or whatever. So it really is one of those things where, like, say Coleman's guilty, he probably needs to be in prison for life. But it's tragic because I don't, if it was psychosis that told him to do it, he's not really responsible. Mm-hmm. Especially in something like this where he never even had a chance to get care because there were no clear symptoms.
Yeah.
Just out of the blue.
Right.
Now, if somebody's been in care for like 10, 15 years and you're like, look, you're dangerous sometimes. You need to take your medication. You need to be supervised. You can't have weapons. You can't have car keys. And they go do that. You could say, okay, they're somewhat responsible. They knew. But out of the blue, I mean, what if he was just psychotic out of the blue? It's very cruel. Obviously for the kids who died and for him.
There are 2 points I've been thinking of. First of all, A Beautiful Mind, great movie. I do love that movie. Russell Crowe is just an amazing actor.
Good actor.
And Paul Bettany was amazing in that movie. I think he's a great actor in just about everything.
Wasn't Ed Harris in there too?
Yeah, Ed Harris.
He's actually a pretty good actor.
Yeah, Ed Harris is a great actor. But as wonderful an actor as Russell Crowe is, he did a terrible job at portraying the schizophrenia.
Yeah.
Like he was too lucid. Even when they were like, this shows that where he was in his big psychotic phase, like he's really delusional. He was too lucid.
Yeah, it's noisy.
He wasn't, demonstrating that kind of, as I've seen, like glazed-eyed, just disconnect.
Yeah.
From everything around. He was operating, even though he was not functional technically. Russell Crowe wasn't able to act non-functional.
Right. Real psychosis is noisy and tangled and messy.
Yeah.
I think in the movie, though, they wanted to try to make clear, like Ed Harris was clear, but it wouldn't be that way. It would be a shadow on the floor, not somebody dressed in clothes and talking to you.
Right. I forgot my other point. Yeah, I forgot the other point.
Was it about the quickness and
Oh, yes, it was about the quickness. The phrase they use 0 to 100. I talk to my clients about this all the time. It's very, very rarely 0 to 100. Mm-hmm. With things, especially with things like anxiety, and even I think psychosis, we tend to be sitting at 45. Mm-hmm. And 45 becomes such a normal state that we think, why I'm at 0. Because you're used to riding at 45. Mm-hmm. And from 45 to 100 doesn't take as quickly as from 0 to 100. And I've had some clients where we've worked on bringing calmness in and bringing awareness in and bringing the general sense of safety down. And once they get down to like, a 2 or a 3 out of 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. Then when the similar thing happens that would cause them to panic attack, they're like, wait, I didn't panic.
Yeah.
Because they go from 2 to 6, not 5 to 10. And the similar thing can be going on with the psychosis. Like as you mentioned, there were many little breadcrumb clues that there was something going on there. So if psychosis was riding, had hit the midline instead of at 0, then the snap just was a little tiny uptick. It wasn't 0 to 100. It was 50 or 60 to 100.
Yeah. And it happened to be homicidal. If it happened to be related to gambling, we wouldn't be here having this discussion.
Yeah.
He drove to Las Vegas and he gambled away all their money. I mean, wife
That's a
probably
manic
would have
episode.
Yeah, his wife probably would have been upset with him, but but it wouldn't have been like this. So it's the type of delusion that took a hold.
Yeah.
This one's particularly dangerous because he was fighting for the world in his mind. Again, if he's not malingering, which he could be.
Could be.
Yeah. Although it seems strange to confess. Like, I don't know. I mean, he tried to get away with it, but he confessed.
Right.
But who knows? Yeah. It's an odd presentation. It doesn't really make a lot of sense in the world of mental health or without it. Like, ill or not, symptomatic or not. He doesn't fit.
Yeah.
So, interesting, because there was another guy named Coleman. Was it Christopher Coleman who murdered his family? I can't remember where that was. But he was before Chris Watts. Christopher Coleman wiped out his family, and he had this whole story. He was clearly guilty. He was found guilty and sentenced to prison. But again, the Coleman name matches there. It just doesn't mean anything. It's just I found that interesting because I think that Christopher Coleman was really one of the first family annihilators that became like notorious. Then, of course, Chris Watts came along, and now he's like the one that everybody thinks of.
Right.
Yeah.
I gotta say, like, while it's not common, Coleman has been used as a first name. And I was told once, never trust someone with 3 first names. Mathew, Taylor, Coleman. There were signs from the beginning. Just putting that
If you can't point to the Instagram posts, then maybe just the name.
It was there.
So, final thoughts on Coleman. I'll start you, Jeff.
Well, we don't have a lot of information, and maybe that's the most unfortunate part. We have to speculate about a lot of stuff. But there are 2 young kids who are dead, a wife and a mom who no longer has her kids, and whose husband, just from her perspective, at least what we know from her so far, just completely went off, and she didn't expect anything like this. And so a very unfortunate thing, even more so than many, many cases that we see. And yeah, we talked about how there's not a lot of details that really line up, things that are certainly not typical in cases like this. And so just a lot of unknowns, a lot of questions. And if it's true that he did adhere to conspiracy theories, then I guess that just makes it that much worse for those theories, for people out there who believe that things are happening in the world that they're trying to unfold and uncover and fix and solve and things like that. And it just makes it that much worse, I guess, for the climate in which we live, political or otherwise. So I don't know, this one was particularly difficult for me to read, just in particular with the young kids. But just that we could see so much information, like with the Instagram and the social media pages and everything. And just how weird it was to see this just happen, seemingly maybe out of nowhere, but maybe not. We don't really know. So I don't know. This was a particularly tough one, I guess, just to read about, to research.
Yeah, isn't this like the worst nightmare too from a mental health standpoint when we're advocating and saying the truth, which is people with mental illness aren't more dangerous than people without it. Right? There's some illnesses that are overrepresented a little bit, like schizophrenia, but even with that, most people with schizophrenia aren't dangerous. And here we have a case where, potential psychosis at work, and it leads right to a murder with hardly any warning from our perspective. So it kind of works against our message a little bit, unfortunately. Doesn't mean our message is less true, but it's just, it's an exception. And now people would say, oh, what about Coleman? You say people with mental illness aren't dangerous. What about Coleman?
Yeah, right.
What do you think, Mike?
I don't think I could put it as any more eloquently. It was a difficult case to read about. I actually am looking forward to more information on this case, to seeing like what resolution occurs. Like I'll be keeping an eye on the 31st. I'll be keeping an eye to see what happens with the arraignment, to find out, because I think it is a fascinating case, and one that I want to know more details about. And I think it's going to be followed quite well. But I think my two big takeaways from this particular episode is that one is Point Break. With Kurt Russell, and the original Point Break with Kurt Russell and Keanu Reeves is a classic movie. It's a wonderful movie. And the other takeaway is that this has clearly been an episode of Alien Lizard Humanoids.
And we went on some pretty good tangents there too.
The debate will rage on forever. What was it? Was it Murder Part, or was it Alien Lizard Humanoids? So I think with this case, conspiracy theorists usually are not dangerous. A lot of people who believe in unusual things are not dangerous. Sometimes they are. And I think this is just one of those frightening cases where something was lost there. There was this paranoid belief, this grandiosity maybe, and it moved over into the physical realm, moved over into actually causing harm. And, I've known a lot of people who believe in conspiracy theories, and they're very sure they're true. But when asked about hurting somebody, like, oh, no, I wouldn't do that. Mm-hmm. Essentially, they're saying, I really want to believe in this, but I'm never going to act on it. We talked about this with the UFO people, I call them.
The ufologists.
Yeah, I mean, in some sense, it's a fantasy, and they want the fantasy to continue, and they're not harming anybody. And they may be right. Maybe there are aliens and flying saucers, right? Who knows? And, same thing with conspiracy theories. Some conspiracy theories are true, right? Maybe they're right. The question is, though, if you find yourself wanting to hurt somebody, that's really a time to step back and really think things through, right? That doesn't make any sense. Even if the conspiracy theories are true, even if the Earth is flat and the moon landing was faked, there's no need to hurt anybody. Just live on the flat Earth and don't worry about the moon. Whatever the moon is, if the Earth is flat, it's like a disc, it's like a light, right?
Yeah, and there's a dome with lights that spin around, and it's like it's as flat as this table. I don't see how, but apparently.
Well, you don't know the truth, so.
Yeah, I'm not kidding.
Not even going to listen to you anyway.
All right, so we'll wrap up there. This was an episode of, who knows what. Could have been Alien Lizard Humanoids, could have been the murder part. It'll probably be tagged as the murder part, and that's what we'll upload it as, but we'll let the debate rage on. So please put any thoughts you might have about Mathew Taylor Coleman in the comment section. We read that. We appreciate it. We get good ideas for future episodes. I think we had a few ideas tonight about like Ghislaine Maxwell and Lori Vallow.
Yeah.
Right. So, but always looking for other ideas. Really appreciate that. We will come up with another episode of Murder Part pretty soon. We thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.